Pledge and a moment of silence, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Robbins,
Here.
Commissioner Rushton,
Present.
Commissioner Bailey,
Here.
Commissioner Wessel,
Here.
Commissioner Sotis Little,
Here.
Commissioner Alguier,
Here.
Commissioner Lautner, present.
Good morning, everybody. This is our second meeting for administrator candidate interviews. We will have 3 interviews today, and then we will take a very short break, and we will have some planning discussion for next steps. At this time, we have public comment. Any public comment this morning? Yes, Mr. Mikowski.
This eats into his interview time. This eats into his interview time. It eats into his interview time.
You can adjust.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yesterday, we were here to address the commission and whether or not we should apologize to the clerk and the residents for the gross mishandling of the removal of the finance and human resources functions from the county clerk. Hopefully, you have planned to put that in order to have it happen. It should be the first order of business today. Failure to do so will perhaps politically corrupt this commission's legacy and negatively impact in the administrator of being able to do the best possible job for people. Came across another article from history, talks about the rule of sewage. And I'm addressing this not as an individual, to an individual, as a public body. And it talks to this author as a person, says some piece of information about the character of a person is so negative that no matter what else you know about the person, you instantly understand the core of the person's question. There's in fact a folk wisdom saying that illustrates the concept, which I first heard in a talk show on radio. The radio announcer says it tells me everything I need to know about them. The point he's making here that nobody is perfect. But he talks about the way sewage contaminates everything. Imagine you have 2 cups of sewage. 2 cups. One contains a purest, wonderful water possible. The other raw sewage. When you mix the 2, you get sewage. The same for a cup of sewage in a pitcher of water or a barrel of water, regardless of the size of the pure water container. This becomes a root of what we developed as the 6 rules of sewage in regards to character. And particularly, I've notion on the rule number 2, bad character leaks into other elements of character. I'm not speaking about the commission. So, if you make a very bad decision and you don't account for it, it means and it puts into doubt the ability of the whole body to function in doing the necessary good things you want. So again, I urge you all to do an apology and leave yourself a positive legacy for this board in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any commissioner comment? I do have a short commissioner comment. I appreciate Mr. Mikowski coming forward today, and we've heard from him before. It is true that this board had discussion on the process. Many of us had concerns about the process. All of us have a responsibility once decisions from a board are made to move forward. We're all optimistic that things are moving forward on this. We're pleased with the organizational plan that's going forward. But I appreciate Mr. Mikowski's comments. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Pelnick.
Good morning, how are you all?
Good. It's good to have you here. We have about 45 minutes to get to know you today. We have reviewed your paperwork. We would like to have you introduce yourself to the audience briefly with a little bit of a background, your background and why you're interested in this position. And then each of us will introduce ourselves to you. So take a minute and briefly review your background and what causes you to be interested in the position.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to apologize in advance. I've come down with a bit of a summer cold, so I'm going to sound very raspy, and I apologize if I wind up either sneezing or coughing during this. So thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. I sincerely appreciate it. I was born and raised in Southwest Michigan in Allegan. Went on to Western Michigan University, got my bachelor's and master's degrees in public administration. Wanted very much from a relatively young age to get into local government. It was something that I was very interested in. So I took a course that was a path that was a little bit different probably than most who wind up in local government. And rather than starting in a larger organization, maybe at the bottom and working my way up, I sort of did the opposite. After I completed graduate school, I was hired to be the village manager of Dexter, Michigan right after graduate school. So I served in that capacity for 4.5 years. I then went on to be the city manager of Dowagiac, Michigan for 4.5 years, to Bay City, Michigan for 6 years. And then I went on also to serve in a number of other states and communities, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, Gastonia, North Carolina, Dallas, North Carolina, and Racine, Wisconsin, and Middletown, Ohio. So over almost 34 years, I have served as primarily a city manager or city administrator. I have loved every minute of it. I really do enjoy local government. I think that every day is something different and it's very personally fulfilling. Gives me the chance to give back to communities and make them hopefully a better place than they were when I came there. And as I, get through my career, I've always looked for new challenges. I've had the opportunity to work very closely with counties over the years, but never actually worked for a county. So very intrigued by and excited by the opportunity to potentially work for and offer leadership to a county. And there's very few counties across the country that are more appealing personally to me than Leelanau County. I've spent some of the greatest days in my life, I think, in Leelanau County. When I lived in Michigan as an adult, I oftentimes wound up gravitating back there because it was such an attractive, beautiful place to be. So many of my fondest memories really are in Leelanau County. I would love to become a part of it and be able to offer the sum total of experience that I have gained over the years in local government to work with and live in your beautiful area. So that's kind of a brief introduction to me.
Thank you. Well, we'll start with our longest serving commissioner, and she'll introduce herself, and then you'll meet the rest of us.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Melinda Lautner, and I represent Solon and Casson Townships down on the southern border of Leelanau County. And I'm a farmer and run 2 seasonal farm markets during the summer.
Excellent. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Deb Rushton. I'm District 2 Commissioner, which is part of Bingham and part of Elmwood Township. I am a small business owner, and I've served on the commission 10 years.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rick Roberts, District 1, half of Elmwood Township, and I also include part of the city that's annexed into the county there. First term commissioner, retired law enforcement.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Lois Bailey, retired family business owner and also involved in cherry and apple farming, longtime resident of the community and newly elected county commissioner for parts of Suttons Bay and Bingham Township.
Excellent. Good morning.
My name is Gwen Allgaier. I'm a first-term commissioner. My district is Cleveland, Glen Arbor, and Empire Townships, which includes the national park.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I'm joining you on Zoom, and my name is Patricia Sotis-Little, and I am the Commissioner for District 5, which is Leelanau and Centerville Townships. I've been Commissioner for 8 years, and I'm retired and a chief faculty member in engineering.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ty Wessel, and I'm the Commissioner for District 4, which is Northport, Leelanau Township, and parts of Suttons Bay Township. And I'm a retired educator, and this is my 4th term. Sitting next to me is a very long-serving county administrator, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Good morning, Jim. My name is Chet Janik, and I'm the reason you're on the Zoom call because I'll be retiring at the end of this year.
Good morning, Chet.
Good morning.
We have a number of structured questions that we're going to go through, and we're on a schedule, so we will start with a question from me, and then we'll rotate questions around the room. My first question is, what is the most important responsibility of the county administrator, and what are the priorities and issues facing Michigan counties in general and Leelanau County specifically?
I think the most important duty, responsibility is to effectively, serve on behalf of and represent your governing body, your elected county commissioners, provide the kind of skill, experience, and background to distill and translate what they hope to achieve on a policy basis to the everyday operations of the organization. So I think that becomes very critical, and a big part of that obviously is the financing. So much of local government is the allocation of scarce resources. We are stewards of the public, and our responsibility more than anything is to take their very precious, hard-earned taxpayer dollars and use them in the most effective and efficient manner possible to provide them the greatest level of services in a manner that is consistent with the strategies and the policies that are brought forward by their elected representatives. So in Michigan, I think obviously one of the issues that are paramount is that ability to effectively raise revenues, keep up with the needs of the public. You rely largely on property taxes. There are constraints related to that form of revenue. Obviously, people are not thrilled about paying their property taxes and don't want them to go up, but they always want high-quality services, and they want them delivered in a very efficient and effective manner. So continuing to maintain that balance is always the toughest thing, and to make certain that you're doing it in a way that meets the true goals and priorities that not only the citizens have, but obviously the way they're translated by their elected representatives. So I think in large part that becomes the biggest part of what we do and why we do this.
Thank you.
I have a 2-part question for you today, and I'll present the first part of the question. Would you please provide for us your definition of integrity in terms of ethics?
I think integrity and ethics something very, very important to me. I've been a member of the International City Management Association for over 30 years, almost 35 years. We have a very specific code of ethics that we're called to live by. And I think in local government, more than anything, particularly in this day and age, ethics and integrity is one of the most important things that we can stand by and live by and continue to pursue. But integrity is always doing the right thing, no matter the political fallout of it, no matter the consequence of it, to stand up for what is, transparency, equality, decency, fairness, honesty. All of those things become critical in local government. and to not just say those things, but to walk the walk, not just to talk the talk. I've always believed that integrity is a critical part of, what we do and what we represent as local government leaders, and have tried to live that and tried to advocate for that throughout organizations when I've been part of the leadership therein. So, again, integrity, I think, is so much about doing the right thing regardless of the consequences.
The second half of the question, I'm going to give you about 1 minute to answer this question. And that is, what standards are you unwilling to compromise in your leadership role?
Those standards are honesty, fairness, equality. There is no compromise. I think you have to treat people with honesty, with equality, with decency, with fairness. We are called to that as representatives of government, and I wouldn't compromise in those areas.
Thank you very much.
If I were to ask your current or former staff how approachable you are, what would they say?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing that. Would you repeat it?
If I were to ask you how your current or former staff, ask them how approachable are you, what would you say?
Did you say approachable?
Yes.
Yes. I would say that they would suggest very much so. My leadership style, my management style tends to be one that is very engaging, very interactive. I like to speak to, communicate with, be in front of my staff on a regular, recurring basis so that they know all the time, what it is we're working on, what's important, and high quality direction. I like to get feedback from them. I like to listen. So much of what we do in terms of having success as an organization comes from their skill and ability. My ability to, utilize their skill becomes critical. So it is important to build a kind of environment to let them know that, they are very valuable, and I value what they have to say. And engaging them on a regular, recurring basis becomes critical. So I think also, too, they will say that, I really demand and ask for legitimate quality input, not filtered, but, tell it like it is, because that's the only way all of us will get better. Iron sharpens iron, and I'm not so proud or sensitive that I can't take criticism, because, the way we all improve is by understanding how we can do things better.
Thank you.
So time management and balancing multiple priorities is an important skill to be effective in this role. How do you make decisions on how you spend your time, and what strategies do you use for balancing multiple priorities?
I think the key that I've learned over the years is it is a matter of priorities. So there is never really enough resources or time in local government for us to do all the things that we would like to do. So that's why we do the best we can when it comes to strategic planning, developing plans, and as part of those plans, establishing for the organization, at the highest level and mid-levels as well, what are our priorities? And where do we have the best chance to have the greatest level of success, with limited resources? So that comes down to my own personal time management as well. Where can I have the greatest value add? And that's really what a manager does. It's about value add. And a lot of people with specific skills, and then the manager who comes in with some skills in all those areas, but adds value by being able to both effectively balance those things, understand where you can create value by adding your time, your expertise, and bringing people and things and resources together in a manner that ultimately is greater than the individual parts. So I think that prioritization becomes absolutely critical.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe I have the next question, and this is a two-part. So the first part of it is, what would your approach to establishing and maintaining a good working relationship with the Board of Commissioners be? And what is your understanding of the role of the county administrator relative to the relationship with the Board of Commissioners?
I think developing a relationship with the county commission, obviously, early on, I would want to spend a lot of time individually with each member to just pick their brain, if you will, to find out everything that's on their mind. How do they see the future for the county? What do they want to be involved in? What's the history? What's important? Talk to me about policy issues. Talk to me about what's priority for you. What do you see that we're doing well? What do you see that we're not doing well? And then on a regular recurring basis, make certain that I am maintaining a number of communication avenues with all the commissioners so that everybody is getting good quality information consistently and the same. But having said that, some commissioners do like to communicate in different ways than others, and I would be sensitive to, meeting those needs to the best I possibly could. Obviously, the administrator is there to translate and distill the policy goals and objectives of the governing body through the organization and turn them into implementable, service provision and efforts and programs and projects on behalf of the county that will be consistent with what that governing body wants to see. I often say that my job is to make all of you successful. And for me to do that, I really have to understand in your mind, what does success look like? So it's critical to understand very early on and then consistently get feedback on what is success. Because what we're going to try to do is be successful as possible on your behalf. But you have to help me define what ultimately that success is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I believe I'm next. County government is a unique form of government. The Board of Commissioners and other elected officials, such as the clerk, sheriff, treasurer, are co-employers. Have you ever asked a co-worker to perform a task he or she refused? How did you resolve this conflict?
Well, I think the best way is to show early on that you're highly respectful of those colleague individuals, because that's what they are, they're colleagues, and talk about how you can work together to make the organization as best that it can be, and then offer them the fact that you do have a lot of experience and understanding, and is there ways that you can help those individuals, and try to explain to the fullest extent possible why it is that you're asking for a certain thing and what the possible consequences, are if that doesn't happen, and show how what you're doing is hopefully in their best interest. Because that's always the goal, is if it's in their best interest and the organization's best interest, that's all you're trying to do. And if you can show that effectively and convince them of that, I think you have a really good chance that they'll see it. And if not, maybe in the process, they'll be able to show me that maybe what I'm not doing, there's a better way, or we may reach some sort of compromise that in the end will actually be better for both, because by being very transparent in what we believe and putting it out there and interacting in a very civilized sort of normal discourse, we will get to the very best answer. And I think that's what's critical that we all have to look at in local government is the more we can honestly have civil discourse around whatever difficult issues there are, the better chance we are to get to the best possible answer in the end. And it may not be the answer that, we all started with to begin with. So that's the approach that I would take and always do take. I've had a great deal of success over the time in my career in negotiating difficult tasks, difficult things, difficult ideas with people because of an approach of oftentimes taking empathy. Where is that other person coming from? What do they believe in? Why do they need what they need? Is there a way we can create win-win or shared compromise or shared sacrifice? So I think that's my approach generally.
Okay, I have the next question, Mr. Pelnick. Describe, and this is two parts, describe the experience you've had
in disciplining and/or dismissing an employee, and the steps you followed in the process. That is the first part.
Yes, I think, given that I've served, as a local government manager over 30-plus years, I've had many instances, unfortunately, over the years, to have to discipline employees, and in a number of cases, having to terminate them. And I think, you always follow very closely the policies that have been established within your human resources department to treat people fairly, to follow due process, to make certain that along the way, that there is plenty of information being provided as to if it is a matter of a failure to perform in some way, that periodic, regular, written and verbal discussions in which you make clear what the failure was or what the lack of performance was, and then put in place a performance improvement plan and make clear what the mandated deadlines are in meeting certain performance factors, and then follow through on those. And if they don't match it, then ultimately a progressive discipline leading up to the fact of termination. Probably the most difficult kinds of terminations are not where someone has egregiously done something that is clearly against either the law or ethics or clear, visible city policy or county policy, but the case where they're genuinely trying to do the best job they can and they simply don't have the competence to do it, and then you take them through a process in which you try to improve through training, through interaction, through performance improvements to get them, better at what they do, and ultimately it proves that they just can't do the job. Those are tough, because obviously you want to see someone succeed, you always work hard to help them succeed. But sometimes in the end, it's an allowance to let them see that perhaps they're in the wrong place and doing the wrong thing. So it's a process in every case to make certain that you look out for the rights of the individual, but as well as to make sure that the organization is being served properly and following due diligence along the way.
Thank you. The second half of that question is, tell us about a time when you had to give feedback to an employee who displayed a lack of professionalism in their work relationship. What did you say? What standards did you set? What was the outcome? So that's a lack of professionalism. You may have covered most of that already.
Yeah, and I think it's again being very professional in your demeanor and not being, in a sense, overly critical, but talking about the issues at hand and laying them out in the most sort of matter-of-fact way and offering to help them to improve, because the goal always is to try to help them improve. So it may be hard enough to say, did you realize that when you behaved in a certain way or you did these things or said these things, that it appeared to the people that you were interacting with as highly unprofessional, or that they felt, angry or intimidated or whatever. And I don't know that you meant to do that, but, this is the way it came across. Is there something going on? Can I assist you? Were you aware that you were perceived that way? So again, work with them in a manner that isn't confrontational, but that, tries to assist them in understanding the way that perhaps they came across and the way that they can improve that behavior in the future.
Thank you. One more. Have you ever been a member of a group where two of the members did not work well together? What did you do to get them to create a team atmosphere?
Well, I think many times along the years in local government, you wind up working with people that may not get along that well. I've often had the luxury, I guess, is that I was the head of the organization, and that oftentimes it might have been that they were part of the organization underneath me. So not that should make a difference, but obviously they recognize the fact that they would maybe have to work closer together. But again, empathy, I think, is critically important. Try to draw out from those individuals what it is that they're about, what's important to them, and see if you can create an atmosphere where those individuals recognize that they have things in common, that maybe they're, in many ways alike, or that maybe they can certainly respect one another more so because of maybe some difficulty in their life or something to that effect. And again, I'm also having to do this with community groups, with people in other jurisdictions of government, people of the faith-based community, people in nonprofits, and you oftentimes have to do that and bring them together. And again, I like to use empathy. Let's talk about the things that we have in common. Let's sort of downplay those things that maybe are creating whatever that negativity is, because we're here to try to create, again, that win-win situation, or at worst, to share sacrifice or share compromise, so that everybody at least gets the best they can out of whatever we're working on. And that it isn't about any one of us winning or prevailing, or rather that, we do something that everybody can live with.
Thank you.
Describe your experience with budget development, financial management, and developing grant proposals.
Well, with budget development, I have been solely responsible over the years for, I think, 33 separate municipal budgets. Those range in size from a little over $2 million per year to well over $200 million per year. Also along the way, responsibility for 5 and 10-year capital improvement programs, for detailed financing of any number of projects over the years. So lots and lots and lots of experience developing budgets. I can say that in all of those budgets, for the most part, we came in very close in the draft budget to what was ultimately approved. And I say that not as a means to say that somehow we manipulated the process, but rather, if you're throughout the year spending lots of time understanding and working with and working through issues and priorities with your governing body, with your department heads and others, then you can fully understand what it is they want to accomplish and find ways to translate that budget document in a manner that's going to best utilize those resources and give them what they want. So I think we've been able to do that really well over the years. An awful lot of work doing creative public and private financing, oftentimes with economic development projects, oftentimes with difficult things that people felt they couldn't get done. I've done lots and lots of work with financing through bond issues, whether that be general obligation, revenue bonds, TIF bonds, other kinds, with both utilities, general obligation, aquatic centers, libraries, community centers, 2 different city halls, a minor league professional sports arena, 2 hotels, 1 with a conference center, multiple fire stations, wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant. So I would say a particular area of expertise is really budgeting and finance and capital improvements.
Thank you.
Have you had a chance to research the county's past audits? If so, what is your impression of the county's financial condition?
I did have the opportunity probably a fairly cursory review to look at your 5-year capital plan, to look at your budget this year, to look at those kinds of things. It seems like while you're not affluent, you are in decent shape. I think many communities, counties throughout Michigan face some of the same challenges. Obviously, that isn't lost on you. I wouldn't say that I've gone into great depth, but it looks like you've been doing a reasonably good job in meeting the needs of the county from what I've seen.
All right. And you've pretty much answered the second half of my question, but if there's anything else you would like to add about some of the budgets you've taken care of in the past, if you would like to describe your experience in establishing a budget accountability system.
Well, it's critical to communicate all the time. I don't think that you can look at a budget and say, oh, that's budget season, we take that up a certain time, and that's when we do it. if you are communicating all the time with your department heads, with your employees, with the governing body and others, you're always talking about ways that you're going to improve the process, use revenues more effectively, maybe find creative ways to generate revenues, improve the way you spend dollars, or better prioritize the spending of dollars, or looking forward to the future. So it's an always ongoing sort of everyday process, because the way we do government is so much reflected through the process of a budget. Because that is the document that allows us to take these scarce resources and then, put into our hands as stewards on behalf of the public and use them in the most effective manner possible. So it's also incumbent on us to all the time be trying to find out, are there better ways, more creative ways, more effective ways that we can use those resources on behalf of our citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are the 3 effective leadership qualities you think are the most important? How have you demonstrated these qualities in your past or current position?
3 most effective leadership qualities. Honesty, I think, is absolutely critical, without question, because if you can't be honest, you're not going to be able to really lead anybody. With honesty, sort of as a parallel, is transparency, is making information out there. You should have nothing to hide, because government is public. We need to be very transparent about what we do. Equality and equity, both. I think equality is pretty clear, treating people and doing things so that there's equality, but also there's a need for equity. And equity sometimes is very different from equality, in the sense that sometimes, historically, maybe we've done things that didn't make things equal, and we have to disproportionately change it in the future to bring equity to bear, or to, put more emphasis on one thing, one area, one person, whatever that is, in order to create equity, where in the past there wasn't. There was inequality. And, walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Effective communication, honesty, equality, all things that I value highly and are critical to, leading anybody and being a good, effective local government leader.
Mr. Pelick, I think I have the next question. And you've talked a bit about how you interact with staff and with others in your community as you worked on issues. This is a 2-part question again, and it focuses a little more on specific groups. So if you could describe the methods you would use to effectively relate to and work with elected officials and key leaders in Leelanau County and its community. And the second part is to give us an example where you built collaborative partnerships.
I think, and I'm going to repeat myself a little bit in the sense that, empathy is something I always try to lead with. I try to understand whoever I'm working with, specifically elected officials and leaders. Where are they coming from? What do they believe in? What do they want to accomplish? And what does success look like for them? And then how is that different one from the other? And how do I find ways to bring them together? So that becomes critical. A manner in which I was collaborative, I'll give you an example. This was in North Carolina, and I was the city manager of Gastonia, and we were interacting with the county, Gaston County. And in North Carolina, the county has the ability to determine how it distributes sales tax to its individual jurisdictions. And I think there was about 16 individual jurisdictions in that particular county. And depending on whether you do it as a population-based or ad valorem, it is either better for typically the individual jurisdictions or better for the county in terms of who has financial benefit from it. And that county had been doing it by the population base, and they were going to the ad valorem, which was going to hurt all of the individual jurisdictions. So I took on the leadership role of bringing all those other jurisdictions together and then working together jointly to speak with one voice and then negotiating with the county on a kind of long-term, hold harmless and a plan to slowly phase in what was going to be a change, because the change was going to hurt all those jurisdictions a lot, and it was going to be very harmful, if it happened all at once. So we were able to cooperatively, and I served as the leader, the spokesperson for that group, to find a way, and then we did. We negotiated a long-term contract that every one of those 16 jurisdictions signed off on, that they felt good about, that ultimately I felt the county felt good about as well, and we created again one of those compromise situations that if it wasn't a win-win, was at least a sharing of sacrifice so that everybody felt good when it was over.
Thank you for sharing that example.
No problem, thank you.
Back to me again. Turn the page. Name one of your best accomplishments, including where the assignment came from, your plans in carrying it out, how you eventually did carry it out, and any obstacles you overcame. What types of problems do you most enjoy tackling? Give us some examples of such problems you faced. What did you enjoy most about them?
I will take the example of when I was hired to be the city manager of Rio Rancho, New Mexico. This was one of the fastest growing cities in the United States at the time, but it was largely undifferentiated urban sprawl in the Albuquerque area. It was mostly fast growing residential. There was, as they say, little to no there. And that was really problematic because not only did we have nothing that looked like a downtown or a city center, but those kinds of things, commercial, retail, institutional, is what really produced the revenues for a community in New Mexico, which was gross receipt taxes. So I was told very early on that the goal was to create a city center or downtown from scratch. And while that was a goal, nothing had been done on it. So in the course of 3.5 years, we were able to acquire land, 160 acres, through the state land commissioner's office in a swap that we ultimately pulled off that was trading valuable land that was at the absolute heart of our community for what had been a sludge application field that the city owned. And then we were able to finance and construct a $47 million minor league arena, multi-purpose event center, a brand new $17 million city hall that was the terminating vista of a new Main Street, a satellite campus for the University of New Mexico, a satellite campus for Central New Mexico Community College, set up the opportunities for a full urban downtown Main Street retail district. We're able to set the stage for what ultimately became a teaching hospital for the University of New Mexico, and negotiated a deal with Lionsgate to do a motion picture studio there that ultimately didn't come to be, but we put the deal in place. So it took an incredible amount of effort between a lot of people at every level, between the city, the county, the private sector, the state of New Mexico, the university system, and others, to, on a very rapid basis, move things along in a way that took advantage of some of the things that were going on at the time. So we had a lot of success because, I like to say that the definition of luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So we were preparing all the things in the right manner, so when opportunity came along, we had success in getting it done. So the obstacles along the way were bringing all those people together to recognize that we needed to do some of those things. We needed to put together a lot of financing together in a short period of time, that it meant what we needed it to be for the city, for the county, for the state, for others, for the university system. So that was an incredible challenge, but a lot of fun, enjoyed every aspect of it. So that's probably my best example of having success in a relatively short time in a fairly, and along that process, actually, the way we financed the arena, we were able to do a $16 billion industrial development revenue bond on behalf of Intel, which happened to be in our community. And as a result of that, we negotiated with the county some funding that allowed us to get an $8 million jump start that really created the foundational funding for what allowed that arena to move forward.
Thanks, Tosh. Yeah, that was my question, so thank you.
Commissioner Rushton.
You've kind of hit on a lot of different subjects here. You may have covered this already, but I'm going to ask, what is the riskiest decision you have made? Tell us about the situation and tell us what happened.
Riskiest?
I do have a second part to,
Question?
yes, that is. I have a second part to this question, but I'll let you answer the first.
I have been involved, I've been very much involved in economic development and redevelopment throughout my career. And oftentimes in manners that you don't often see in local governments. So in that regard, there's been risk involved in a number of places because we took on significant public-private ventures that were critically important to the future of our community. And we did things often that a local government might not do. And I think I just described one of them, which was developing a city center from scratch in Rio Rancho, particularly as having sort of the keystone or the catalyst for it be this $47 million multi-purpose event center, minor league arena. And, you know, really allowing the city to make this huge difference in statement, and it's what the community wanted. But obviously something like that was very, very risky. And the risk in that case turned out unfortunately in a manner that probably nobody foresaw, which was we were building it in 2004-5, came online in about 2006. And if you'll recall, you know, what happened to our economy in somewhere around 7, 8, 9, we went into probably the worst recession we've seen in decades. So unfortunately, when we really needed, you know, all of those things to come on at the right time, it absolutely proved to be the very wrong time. So as a result of that, some of the economic assumptions that were made that everybody believed in and, you know, assumed would happen weren't there because of this incredibly big downturn in the economy. So, I mean, we did it in such a way that, you know, the burden to the public and the taxpayers were limited, but that risk did, you know, play out in a manner that, you know, wasn't what we had imagined, because things can happen that are significant. You know, nobody ever imagined having a pandemic, for instance. Nobody imagined a recession being as significant as it was back in 2008, 9. So keep some of those things in mind, and I think that's the lesson that we learned. And of course, in my career, which has been pretty lengthy, I think those are two big things that, you know, I will remember, which is a pandemic can occur and a significant economic recession can occur. So when you structure these things, keep the very worst in mind. So imagine that if that happens, that can happen. So later in my career, when I was in Racine, Wisconsin, and we were financing the extension of water and sewer on behalf of the Foxconn development, which was in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, near us, but we were responsible for the water and sewer and had extended some $220-some million worth of water and sewer. We made certain that there was a belt and suspenders and another belt and many more suspenders when it came to, you know, looking out for our citizens so that there was no risk financially, because ultimately, again, the Foxconn project, which was pushed and pursued by people at the highest levels, including the federal government as well as the governor, did not turn out as successful as everyone hoped. But in the process, we at least fully maintained financial integrity for our city in extending the water and sewer. There was never any concern about the finances of that, because others did backstop it in multiple ways, so we were held harmless.
The second.
So it's a long, rambling answer, I'm sorry, but I've had a lot of different experiences along the way, so I wanted to sort of give you some sense of that.
My last question, and again, your time on this one is a little bit on the short side, so keep it as brief as you can. Tell us about a time when you had to make an unpopular decision. What was the situation like?
I think, oftentimes, many unpopular decisions, I think, are when you're working with collective bargaining groups or with employee groups, and they would very much like to see improvements in either their wages or their benefits or something to do with their healthcare, things like that. And unfortunately, on behalf of the organization, which as a leader you have to be concerned about, you have to put forward that which is not going to go over very well. And I've had to do that many, many times in negotiating collective bargaining agreements or in right-to-work states where, you might have the ability more to impose that. But what you do, I think, in every case is try to communicate as effectively as possible again, as to why it's happening and what the resources are. So if you're as transparent as possible, while people may not be happy, they will at least understand those decisions. And whether that's collective bargaining or whether it's any difficult decision, the key again is communication. Give as much as possible, be as transparent as possible, and at least people will better understand even if they don't agree.
Thank you.
Mr. Pelnick, we are done with our questions, and we have some more interviews today. We had some interviews yesterday, and then we're going to be meeting to talk about next steps. But before you go, is there anything that you would like to ask us?
I don't know if I have anything specifically, but I'd just like to say again, I apologize. I know I sound a little raspy, but I really, really sincerely appreciate the time that you've given me and the chance. And I would, love to be considered further for this. I love your area, I love your county, I love to work for it, love to make my home there. I guess if I had one question, I would ask maybe any of you or all of you, however you want to do it, is what is the most important trait or skill that you would like to see in a county administrator? What's most important to you when it comes to those individual skills or traits?
I think I could answer that. You did see our profile, our candidate profile, and we developed that collectively after lots of discussion. So I think in that profile are the characteristics of the administrator that we are looking for.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I sincerely appreciate it. You all have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Let us take a 8-minute break.
It's still morning. You were quite impressive out there on the dance floor. Were you at Polka Fest? Some people made it down to Polka Fest, hi. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, and I asked Ms. Allen if she preferred to be called Ms. Allen, and she said, call me Deb. So this is Deb Allen, and we've all had the opportunity to read through your paperwork and your application, but we are videotaping this for later, so we'd like to give you an opportunity to reintroduce yourself, talk about your experience, what brings you here, what your interest is, and then we'll introduce the commissioners.
Absolutely. I want to thank you all for the opportunity for me to come and talk with you this morning, a little bit about myself and why I'm interested in this position. So I've had a background of community service my entire career. I started out as a chamber director right after college and grad school. In fact, for a brief stint, I was, right during grad school, I was offered a position with a Fortune 500 company as their HR manager. And during that time, I also received my commission with the United States Naval Reserves. So it was a very active time during there, but again, the common theme throughout my career has been service to community, service to country. And then from there, I was actually recruited to a Chamber of Commerce in Northern Michigan based on my position with this Fortune 500 company. Started as a committee, on the committee, and then moved to the opportunity for the Chamber Director position. So that started my career as a Chamber Director, representing several different communities, several different counties. So my husband's from Michigan, so he is my Michigan connection from Pennsylvania.
And we have heard about a position, a chamber position here in northern Michigan for Crawford County. And of course, he is a northern Michigan hunter, fisher, and so he just was so excited about that. So we, as they say, loaded up the truck and moved to Crawford County. And we enjoyed that for several years, working on coordinating their tourism, their business and economic development. I served on the Economic Development Corporation as their secretary. From there, was recruited to Gaylord and worked for Otsego County, same capacity, much larger chamber, more business representation, more involvement in economic development and community growth and promotion. And then had the opportunity to make a transition in my career. I started my own consulting business. Working with boards has been something that I really enjoyed. So I worked as an executive director interim position, as well as doing strategic planning, board development, those types of things. Did that for several years. And then my president, who was the CEO of Otsego Memorial of the Chamber Board, had recruited me to come help start their hospital foundation. Led them through a $3 million capital campaign, got the bug for fundraising, and worked in that then for the rest of my career. So basically, the second portion of my career has been in working primarily in the health arena in terms of community projects, and most recently, things like PACE. So I was hired to start the PACE program from the standpoint of generating the funds necessary to implement that program. And that was probably a great sense of pride for me to be able to serve a multi-county area and to be able to implement that program. From there, working with Grand Traverse Pavilions, we're kind of talking about what's next in terms of programs for our aging adults. And that probably is one of the areas that really inspires me about this position. Along the road, I also wanted to serve my community and ran as a trustee for Elmwood Township, so I currently serve as a trustee. So I have that experience, and those things combined, I think, make me realize that I have skill sets that are unique and that would be beneficial, I believe, not only to the board, based on my board experience and management, as well as community representation, community development, and those aspects, and being a Leelanau resident and knowing the issues, the challenges, the water issues, the septic issues, the broadband issues, the childhood development and workforce issues. So I think I can make an impact.
Thank
So
you.
maybe not so brief, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And before we take our 45 minutes to ask you some questions, we're going to start with our longest-serving commissioner and introduce ourselves.
Yes, good morning. I'm Melinda Lautner. I represent Solon and Casson Townships down on border, obviously, right next to Elmwood. And we farm and run 2 seasonal farm markets on the side.
Deb Rushton. I am District 2. I represent Elmwood and Bingham. I've served on the commission for 10 years, and I am a small business owner. Welcome.
Good morning, Rick Robbins, District 1, half of Elmwood and part of the city that's annexed into the county. First term commissioner, retired law enforcement.
Lois Bailey, newly elected District 3 Commissioner, part of Suttons Bay and part of Bingham Township, retired retailer, a longtime resident of the village of Suttons Bay. Good morning. My name is Gwen Allgaier. My district is Cleveland, Glen Arbor, Empire, the National Park, Paradise over there. I am a first-term commissioner. Welcome.
We have Commissioner Solis-Little.
Good morning, Deb. I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person. As you know, I'm Patricia Solis-Little, and I am the Commissioner for District 5, which is Leland and Centerville Townships, and I'm a retired faculty member from MSU's College of Engineering. Great respect.
And I'm Ty Wessel, and I'm from Northport, District 4, cover Leelanau Township and part of Suttons Bay Township, and this is my 4th term. And you know our Administrator, Chet Janik.
Good morning, Ms. Allen.
We have some questions we're going to ask you, and we're going to share responsibility for that, and we're going to try to keep this down to about 45 minutes. So the first question, what's the most important responsibility of the county administrator, and what are the priorities and issues facing Michigan counties in general and Leelanau County specifically?
Well, I believe the most important role of the administrator would be to be a resource to the commissioners, to be informed of issues that are happening, legislation that's happening, opportunities, whether they be grant opportunities or relationship opportunities. I think that's probably the greatest asset an administrator could be. And in terms of issues facing Michigan, I think there are a great deal of issues, and some very unique to Leelanau County from the perspective of obviously our demographic shift that's happening here in Leelanau County, 1 in 3 individuals being over the age of 60. That is a statewide issue, a national issue, but it's definitely condensed here in Leelanau County. So I think that how that impacts everything from school millages to infrastructure needs to transportation to the housing industry, all of those components I think are mixed in that. And some of the other issues that are critical, obviously, to the Leelanau Peninsula and to our country and our region are water issues. And again, they are intensified here in Leelanau County because we're surrounded by the Great Lakes and our fresh waters. So I know that between Eagle and even the internal, the lake associations and things like milfoil and those types of things, but working with our legislators, with the tribe, with our other community partners, I think is going to be essential to the well-being and the future stability of our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Rushton.
Yes, I get to ask the second question. Provide for us today your definition of integrity in terms of ethics. It's a two-part question. That'll be the first part.
Well, integrity is something that is critically important to me. It's been the cornerstone of my entire career. Truth, honesty, fairness, and compassion, I think, are all components of integrity. And as a past Rotarian, and I say that somewhat reluctantly because for 25 years I was a Rotarian, and just recently due to COVID decided that I was going to pull back from some of my civic engagements. But certainly the cornerstones of that organization are, is it the truth? Is it fair to all involved? Will it build goodwill and relationships? And is it beneficial? So I think that using that litmus test is certainly a way that I have found beneficial to be able to think about that integrity in my own career.
Thank you. Second part of that question is, what standards are you unwilling to compromise in your leadership role, or compromise, sorry.
I'm smiling because I recently was at a wedding and my brother and his wife were the longest married couple, and they asked what did they kind of credit to their long marriage, and he said compromise, which made my sister-in-law almost come unglued because apparently she's the one that compromised. But I think that compromise is a good thing when you're looking at relationships and trying to work out difficult issues. I'm not sure that I would use compromise in perspective of my values, my ethics, what's important to me. From that perspective, if I have to compromise my values, I would, my personal values. Now, there are issues and things like that that always require a compromise, but there are some values, efficacy, transparency, honesty, that I hope I would never be asked to compromise.
Thank you.
If I were to ask your current or former staff how approachable you are, what would they say?
I have the benefit of working with an amazing young man who has been with the organization for about 3 months, new father, new husband, and I had a very difficult responsibility to tell him that I was interviewing for this position. And I can only tell you from his response is that his comment to me was, "I'm happy for you." Okay. And that to me was probably one of the most sincere compliments, because the way I look at working with my staff is I want them all to succeed. You know, high tides float all boats. And so, and I have had the difficult discussion with some employees who have not succeeded and have been reassigned and are succeeding. So I think from that perspective, I would hope that my staff would say, I've received the Boss of the Year award in the past, so while I'm not a pushover, you know, I lead by example. I have high expectations for myself and for my staff, but I think all in all, I think there would be an element of respect and understanding that I want what's best for my staff.
Okay. Well, time management and balancing multiple priorities is an important skill to be effective in this role. Excuse me. How do you make decisions about how you spend your time, and what strategies do you use for balancing multiple priorities?
In my current role, I serve as both the foundation executive director for the Grand Traverse Pavilions Foundation, and I also serve as the marketing and community relations director. So there are multiple tasks, things like grants. Last week I had 2 grants that were due. So there's constantly managing timelines and expectations, and as well as community communications and running events. So I enjoy that. I actually like the concept of, dare I say, multitasking. Some people have a lot of opinions about that, but I think that I bring an expertise on being able to manage multiple projects and managing the time, as long as I have a clear understanding of what the expectations are.
Thank you.
And I have the next question for you. It's one that won't be unfamiliar with your role currently, and that is, it's a 2-part question. What would be your approach to establishing and maintaining a good working relationship with the Board of Commissioners? And what is your understanding of the role of the County Commissioner relative to the Board of Commissioners?
So the first part of that question, if I may, I believe is relevant to all boards that I have worked with. I think that open communication, respect, understanding the roles of the commissioners, and that you are elected officials to serve the residents and constituents in your respective areas, and how I can help to do that, whether it be through information, resources, again, directing any concerns or questions so that you are informed. I have always worked from a premise of, I want no surprises from my staff, and I would never want a commissioner to be surprised by anything that's happening in the community. I would take that as my responsibility to keep them informed. The second part of that question, if you wouldn't mind, if you could repeat that just so I make sure that I answer it effectively.
Oh, absolutely. And that was, a moment here, glasses. Working from 2 computers here, the disadvantage of being here. And then is, what is your understanding of the role of county administrator relative to the relationship with the Board of Commissioners?
I believe that it could best be summed up as a role of resource. It is not the administrator's responsibility to make policy. It is to present the County Board of Commissioners with all the facts, information, that's judgment, perhaps some recommendations, but it is solely the responsibility of the commissioners to then take that information and make the decision as to how best to run the county. So I look at it truly as a perspective as a team, but that my role would be as a resource to the county board of commissioners. Thank you, Dave.
I think I'm up. What? Lost my page here. County government is a unique form of government. The Board of Commissioners and other elected officials, such as the clerk, sheriff, treasurer, etc., are co-employers. Have you ever asked a co-worker to perform a task that she refused? How did you resolve the conflict?
Refused. That's a heavy word. I can think of some situations where people have been reluctant. But I think that probably part of that communication, if there is a refusal, that to me begs a question: what is the concern? So I think that would require communication and just a discussion of what concerns that individual to the point where they would refuse. I think at the end of the day, we all need to remember that we are, work is a privilege. Work is, it's not a suggestion. We all are compensated at the end of the day for our service. So I would hope that anybody that is in a elected role, as some of those positions you mentioned are, would look at this as a team approach to do what is best for the common good. And if I needed to educate myself perhaps on approach, that if something was refused, then perhaps I need to kind of take a moment and think about what was my approach with it. Because I would hope that would not be the scenario, that we wouldn't have a working relationship where we all understood that we're here for the common good.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question. Describe the experience you've had in disciplining and/or dismissing an employee and the steps you followed in the process. And then tell us about a time when you had to give feedback to an employee who displayed a lack of professionalism in their work relationship. Again, what did you say? What standards did you set? What was the outcome? So first discipline or dismiss, and then lack of professionalism.
It's interesting because the two are very blended in
Yeah.
the situation.
Yeah.
So if I may, if I don't answer the question, please feel free. But I think that from my time that I was an HR director and the training that I received, although it was relatively short and early in my career, it has always stayed with me in terms of the importance of communication and process. So I always look at things from, I want to give everybody the opportunities to succeed. So that would mean that we would first have communication about a concern, verbal communication. And then if I needed to, again, relay the verbal concern, then I would probably, at that point, I would probably document those two scenarios. Then I would probably move, if necessary, to a written concern, a written warning, if you will. And then at that point, in this particular situation, our organization had a process for what was called a PIP, a Performance Improvement Plan. So then you sit with that individual and you say, look, we've had this conversation several times, we put this in writing, we're now going to develop a plan for you to succeed. And then these are the steps and measurable outcomes that need to be accomplished to help them to succeed. And if they don't succeed through that process, I have set the expectations, and if they choose, at that point it's a choice. And now if they truly have sat down and they understand what the expectations are and they choose not to, then that's, I think, where then you have to make a tough decision and say, perhaps this is not the best position for you. And I actually had to do that. Fortunately, in our organization, we were able to find another position for this individual, and I'm happy to say that they have excelled in that area. So I think helping people to succeed, sometimes it's not in the position that they're currently in, and hopefully you can find resolve to that. But sometimes you have to have the difficult conversations, difficult discussions, and if they're not the right fit for the organization or they're not able to accomplish the responsibilities, then at that point it should not be a surprise to anyone. It is a choice, I think, at that point. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. I think it covers both. So the next question then would be, have you ever been a member of a group where two of the members did not work well together? What did you do to get them to create a team atmosphere?
That's the joy of working with people. Everybody's different, everyone has different personalities and approaches, management styles, opinions about things, passions. I think that one of the things that I prided myself on throughout my career is being a coalition builder, being a communicator, being someone that can build bridges and to find a common ground. So I think that is critical in that role, is to find out, again, have conversations about what is it that we're working to accomplish? What is the common ground? How do we get to that point and take the personal, as best we can, the personal elements out of it and make it, and maintain the professional.
Thank you.
Describe your experience with budget development, financial management, and developing grant proposals.
So throughout my career, I've always had the responsibility of developing budgets, whether it be for the chambers primarily or in the fundraising components, the different departments that I've worked in. So, and then of course, working in Elmwood Township, more of the governmental perspective of developing the budget for the township and the approval process of that. So I feel, while it is not my area of expertise, I do feel that I do have a working understanding of both the GAAP principle, which is the generally accepted accounting principles, and understand that there's also the governmental component of that, the GAS B, and actually read through the audit, all 143 pages of that to make sure that there weren't any red flags addressed by the auditors. We also have an audit for our organization. Currently, the Pavilions Foundation is also reported to the county as part of the county's audit program, so I'm very familiar with that process. Hopefully that addressed your question in terms of familiarity and awareness and a balance sheet, P&L, and the basic financial documents.
Thank you.
So having read our audit, what is your impression of our county's financial situation?
Well, even before reading the audit, I was well aware that Leelanau County is held up throughout the state as probably one of the best run and financially solid in the state. So kudos to the commissioners and to our administrator and to the team. Some of the key elements, obviously, I think even going through the COVID scenario and still coming out with a positive net, I think was a great demonstration of the commitment and financial regulation and fiduciary responsibility of the board to be able to do that. Certainly going forward, there will be the challenges of the ARPA funds, and whenever there's money available, everyone has their hand out. So I think the first round has gone very well, and I think as the funds are released for the second round, that will be another opportunity to look at ways that the county can improve its services and programs.
So you've touched a little bit on budgeting in the past. So what is your experience in establishing a budget accountability system?
I think that from a standpoint of reporting, there's so much transparency in county government and in township government in terms of the financial reporting, the monthly meetings, and the financials that are presented. So I think that with the standards that have been set in terms of the acceptable practices and managing those elements of financial processes, I think that the transparency is what is critical to ensuring that there is ongoing accountability in those processes.
Thank you.
What are the 3 effective leadership qualities you think are the most important? How have you demonstrated these qualities in your past or current position?
I would say honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. I would say the importance of being an effective communicator And I think it gets back to compassion. I know some people may see that as a soft skill, but if you come from a place of truth and kindness or compassion and integrity and ethics, at the end of the day, I can live with myself and look myself in the mirror and be proud if I work from those premises.
Yeah.
Was there another part of that you wanted to?
That was it. Yeah.
Patricia Sotis Little has a question.
Okay. Deborah, again, this relates to things that you have done in your professional career, and there's two parts. I'm going to ask you the first part of it and then let you answer, and then the second. The first part is describe the methods you will use to effectively relate to and work with elected officials and key leaders in Leelanau County and its communities.
So I think probably the greatest skill that I have worked to and am still continuing to work on is listening. You learn most when you listen effectively. And with both the commissioners and your constituents, I think that's a huge part of what commissioners need to do is to listen and take in those concerns and those issues, and then be able to effectively address those. But with key leaders, there's a multitude of issues as well. Everything, again, that we talked about, education, housing situation, workforce development, internet connectivity, all of those components, I think, in finding out where the priorities lie, and then communicating that back to the commissioners to help to use that information as validation for priorities and goal setting for the commissioners.
And the second part of that question is, can you give us an example of where you built collaborative relationships?
There have been many throughout my career, which I'm thankful for, and whether they were transportation coalitions related to roadways and infrastructure. I'm going way back. 131 Development Committee, in different communities, we're looking at how these transportation systems can benefit them, or what will be the challenges, or in terms of roadways and infrastructure. I think there have been coalitions based on the combination of tourism and economic development. How do you manage those in a community? I think that certainly at the township level, there have been a variety of different issues and programs. I think it's being open-minded, being informed, and being collaborative in your approach to finding those win-wins for individuals.
Thank you.
Turning the page. Name one of your best accomplishments, including where the assignment came from, your plans in carrying it out, how you eventually did carry it out, and any obstacles you had to overcome. What types of problems do you most enjoy tackling? Give us some examples of such problems you faced, and what did you enjoy about them?
I like testing my mettle. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I'm not someone who shies away from difficult conversations, difficult topics, or challenging opportunities. So from that perspective, I think probably one of and this is more relevant, more recent, is when I was hired to coordinate a $3 million campaign to establish the PACE program in Northern Michigan. PACE is a program that a lot of people here in Northern Michigan do not know about, do not fully understand. And so trying to generate $3 million in fundraising to be able to support a program that a lot of people don't understand the nuances of, I think was certainly a challenge. So the communication was the first component of that. I had to do, in essence, a public relations campaign that spoke to what this program was, how it was going to benefit communities. And I actually took those presentations to several different county boards and did presentations on the PACE program, how this could benefit residents. And I'm not sure how familiar the commissioners are. I know that we offer PACE program here in Leelanau County. And so it's an alternative to individuals going to a nursing home that otherwise might not have other options. And so for me, that was an honor to be able to bring a program that could benefit so many families and so many individuals, and to be able to be the spokesperson for that and to speak to a wide variety of individuals, everything from Rotary presentations, as I mentioned, to the County Board of Commissioners, to build collaboration for that. And I'm happy to say that not only have we established the program, the fundraising was successful, and now the program is actually running at its projections and has requested to be able to expand their services in the area. So I think that that's a great story, and I feel very honored to have been part of that.
Okay. Two parts to the question. What is the riskiest decision you've had to make? Tell us about the situation and what happened. And the second part of this question is, tell us about a time when you had to make an unpopular decision.
Well, I suppose the risk, I don't know if it is the riskiest, but it certainly, like I said, is a front lobe, if you will, in terms of my mind. Having to go to my current employer and tell them that I was applying for this position, I suppose is somewhat risky, but I felt, again, integrity, honesty, transparency. I needed to sit with my leadership and with the leadership of my board and share that I was going to make this decision, not out of any disrespect or any, I enjoy my current position, but I felt that this was an opportunity that I personally needed to pursue. It would be the gem, if you will, in a career of service. And so that's a risk, going to your employer and telling them this. I'm happy to say that the comments were, if this is what you want, then we support your initiative, we support your efforts. But again, a lot of people kind of tongue-in-cheek, but we don't know that. And again, that's a great compliment. So that's risky, putting it out there in the public and in the community and that, from that perspective. The second part of your question, if you don't mind?
Sure. Tell us about a time when you had to make an unpopular decision.
Well, as you all know, as elected officials, even at the township level, there have been unpopular decisions. Probably some of the most recent have to do with short-term rentals and those types of things that, these are issues that are, that are at the core of people's existence. This is their home, this is their livelihood, this is, I understand that these are passionate issues to individuals. And so I think that for me, I've had to remove the personal, but appreciate the passion. And I think even the commissioners meeting that I was at here on the 16th of this month, the passion from the individuals that were here speaking, the issues of sewer and water and sustenance, these are key issues to these individuals. And so while they're not always popular, decisions have to be made. And I think that when they're made with the best of intention and integrity and for the common good, I think, again, that's what helps us all sleep at night when we're making those tough decisions for the betterment of our community.
Before we do our wrap-up, does anybody have a follow-up question to one of the questions we've asked, Deb?
Kind of caught us off guard.
I could say, while they're thinking, my stepdaughter works for PACE and has for several years downstate. So it's an excellent program. So thank you for bringing it north.
Commissioner Lautner?
So sorry. Are you familiar with the MERS retirement system? Okay.
I'm currently invested in the MERS program, so I've made a point to understand the process and the system. And at Grand Traverse Pavilions, we just recently went through the bonding issue with the county. So the 2 different rounds of that process. So as the individual that is responsible for communicating, I make a point to have at least a layman's understanding, if not a little bit more so than the topic and the issue. So I would not say I'm extremely familiar with the whole process, but familiar.
Certainly. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much for your interest.
I do have one more. Have you had any experience with labor unions or negotiations?
I have not been part of arbitration or the actual union negotiations. But again, as the communicator and part of a senior leadership team, I've been involved in, some of the conversations, if you will. And I've also received training from a labor attorney through the township primarily in terms of appropriate labor discussions, what is legal, what is not legal, and again, received counsel, from them in terms of processes. So have a working understanding, but fortunately and hopefully I will never have to go through arbitration.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your interest, and we are going to have some more interviews today, and then we're going to discuss our next steps, and we'll be getting back to you. But before you go, are there any questions you have for any one of us?
I suppose that the most logical question would be, what is the skill set that you feel is essential for this position? And I would say anyone that would like to respond.
Well, we've been asked that question before, and I think our answer has been that we collectively developed the candidate profile that I know you saw. And we sat down, and all of those skills in there were our collective wishes. Does anybody want to add to that?
That was a very helpful document, by the way.
Anything else?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I respect the work that you all do.
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you
very
so
much,
much for
Deb.
coming in.
Well, shall we take a brief break and fill out our paperwork and be back at 11 for our final interview of the day?
So we haven't heard from us yet.
Hi, can you hear us?
I hear you all now.
Oh,
I do.
Okay, good.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Are we ready, Madam Clerk? Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, Mr. Ryan. This is our third interview of the day, and we're looking forward to talking with you. We have seen your application package, and we have all reviewed that, but we are making videos of this interview available on our website. And so we would ask you to take a couple of minutes and talk about what attracted you to this position, and kind of summarize your career in a very brief summary, and let us know how this position fits with your long-term career goals.
Well, thank you. First off, thank you for having me. Thank you for reviewing my application and my resume. I do appreciate that very much. I do very much appreciate the opportunity to come here and meet you all. I think to answer the question as best as possible, I think it boils down to my love of the county of Leelanau. Since the early 80s, my folks and my family would travel up to the Leelanau County and stay up there. We have had property up there since the 80s, up near Fisher's Happy Hour Tavern, back when I used to know it as Arts Happy Hour Tavern, right there at Christensen Road. If you go up a mile down south on Christensen Road, there is our property. My folks never built anything there, but we have always enjoyed going up to the county. And then, of course, when I was in undergraduate school, I met some friends from St. Louis who also travel up there, and they have property. And so it's a frequent destination that I end up going to Leelanau County and spending time in Leland. So that's where my draw comes, and the opportunity opened up with regards to the position, and then, stars began to align, and it was an opportunity for me to submit my application for the role of the county administrator, which meets up well with my background and experience that I have currently, which is 20 plus years now of law firm management through administration, through all things law firm, from HR to facilities management to payroll to benefits coordination to, attorney X is not getting along with legal assistant Y and having to negotiate the lovely path of human relations to try and navigate all of that. So then, the opportunity comes with the role for the county administrator, and I do start to see a lot of the similarities with regards to the facilities management, and then also the HR with regards to, negotiating all of the things that rely with the collective bargaining, with all of the different union stuff. So I just see a lot of things coming together where it was an opportune time for me to submit my application to you all.
Well, thank you. And before we begin asking you the questions that we're going to ask of all of our candidates, we'd like to have each of our commissioners introduce themselves to you. We'll start with our most senior commissioner, by experience, not age, I might add.
Thank you. Yes, good morning. I'm Melinda Lautner. I represent Solon and Casson Township down on the border of M72. And we have property also. We farm and manage a couple of small farm markets during the summer.
Very nice. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
My name is Deb Rushton. I'm commissioner for District 2, which is part of Elmwood and part of Bingham. I've served on the commission. This is my 10th year, and I also have a small business.
Wonderful. Nice meeting you, Deborah.
Same here.
Good morning, Rick Robbins, District 1, first-term commissioner, retired law enforcement. My district includes half of Elmwood Township, and there's a portion of the township that's annexed by the city of Traverse City.
Lois Bailey, newly elected District 3 representative, retired from retail business in Suttons Bay, longtime resident of the community and volunteer for many organizations.
Hi, Lois.
My name is Gwen Allgaier. I too am a first-term commissioner. My district is Cleveland Township, Glen Arbor, Empire, which includes the National Park.
Nice meeting you.
Mr. Ryan, I'm Patricia Solis-Little, joining you on Zoom, and I'm the commissioner for District 5, which is Centerville and Leelanau Townships. I've been a commissioner for 8 years, and before that, I'm a retired MSU faculty member from the College of Engineering.
Very good. Nice meeting you, Patricia.
And Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan, my name is Ty Wessel, and I represent Leelanau Township and parts of Suttons Bay, and I do too like the happy hour restaurant. But thank you for being here. Sitting next to me is our county administrator.
Good morning. Just to confirm, I also have spent many happy hours at Christmas over the many years here.
Mr. Ryan, we have 40 minutes or so to talk with you. We prepared some questions. We're going to rotate those around commissioners, but I get to ask you the first question, and that is, what is the most important responsibility of the county administrator, and what are the priorities and issues facing Michigan counties in general, and specifically Leelanau County?
I think it would come down, for me, it would come down to budget. Maintaining a good solid budget, as I understand, is very important. I think we all deal with, whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, I think we deal with issues with supply chain. I deal with that daily in my world. We also deal with, everything from payroll and salary increases to maintaining everything that needs to be done with regard to the functionality of everything here at the law firm. So for me, I believe it's going to be an issue of maintaining the budget. I know the elected people are going to want to make sure that there's a good transparency that needs to be done to maintain, this doesn't become a free-for-all where things are being spent unwisely. And accounting for all of that is very important.
Thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Rushton with a question.
This question is basically a two-part question, and I'll give both parts to you for you to answer independently. Provide for us your definition of integrity in terms of ethics, and what standards are you unwilling to compromise in your leadership role?
Sorry, I'm just writing down your question. I think about two parts. With regards to integrity, I'm reminded from a conversation I had with a professor a very, very long time ago. And it comes down to making sure that you as a leader, you as a mentor, you as the focal point for a group, it's important that there be the respect that is given to the role, and it's making sure that you earn that through example. I have dealt with enough managers in my lifetime where I have not been able to give them the respect of the role because they didn't seem to earn it. I'm thinking of an individual I had back in Chicago in the day, and it was he earned the role through his time and presence of being there, but he didn't earn the respect of the subordinates due to the fact that he himself was a bit outside of what we would expect our leader to do. So I look towards respect when it comes to the role that I'm in, and I earn that through being able to be the one who's going to lead from the front. And that being, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. I'll delegate the responsibility out, but I'm also going to be the one who's going to stand shoulder to shoulder to make sure that the job gets done. And I'm not going to delegate the responsibility out and then turn a blind eye to it. It's going to be about constantly checking in to make sure that the job is being finished and completed on time. And I think it goes a lot to then reflect back on the integrity of the individual who's leading. So I really do feel strongly about working alongside the individuals. Any subordinate in any role, in any capacity, I'm willing to roll up my shirt sleeves to step into the fray, to make sure that the job gets done. And that'll speak to one's integrity, because I'm not afraid or I'm unwilling to say, I don't know the answer to that. Being honest with everyone to say, I don't know the answer to that, but I guess I deal with that daily in my role here with the attorneys. Is they may have an issue on their computer, or computer, failed, their Word document is lost, and they want to know why. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to research it and I'll try to find an answer for you. And that goes a long way to speak to one's integrity. I think the second part.
Excuse me,
Your question?
before we move to the second part, I'd like to drill down on my first question just a little bit here.
Sure.
You had made a comment, respect to the role, having it has to be earned. So what qualities would bring respect to the role? What qualities do the leader have to bring respect to the role? That's what I want you to share with us, your opinion.
Yeah, I feel strongly that being honest and being transparent are the two qualities that are very important in any sort of leadership role. That it's important to come to the table and have that honesty about where you stand on an issue, and being able to, put it forth without having to be afraid of, any sort of comments that are out there. You have to have a strong commitment to where you stand. But if you're honest with yourself and with others, I think it speaks for itself.
Thank you.
The second part of your question was what standards I believe I would have or bring to the role. Did I write that down right?
No. What standards are you unwilling to compromise in your leadership role?
Thank you. I think it would be the dishonesty. I would look to everybody. I say it here in the office with legal assistants, and I've always said it is, are you an adult? I don't like to micromanage because there's enough things that go on in my day on a day-to-day basis that I don't have time to oversee and do someone's job. So I look towards everybody in the subordinate role to be able to step into the position that they've been hired for and execute that job to the best of their ability. And it's when we have a breakdown where I have to now start to micromanage the role that becomes an issue and a problem. So I would look, like I've said before, I look to be honest with everybody about where I stand. And if you get into a situation where you're having trouble and you're in over your head, raising your hand and saying, I don't know the answer to this, can you assist me, is better than trying to fudge your way through it and get yourself into trouble. Because if I now have to start involved on a day-to-day basis with how everybody is getting their job done, then it prevents me from being able to get my job done. And it then becomes an issue and we have to address the issue. So I look to I look to everybody to step up to the role that they've been hired for, be honest about it, and if they have issues, raise their hand and say, I need assistance with this to get it done.
I'll remind commissioners that we have 13 more questions, and so we're going to ask everybody to hold you accountable for 2 or 3 minutes per question. Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan.
Okay. Mr. Ryan, if we as a board were to reach out to your current or former staff, what would they say, how approachable you are, and what would they say?
I believe they would be honest with you, and I think they would also say that he's a great guy, that he's honest in what he does, that he is also very helpful, that Dan is willing to, assist where things need to be done, that I'm always here. I am always somebody who is present. I rarely, take time off. I have I would say middle school, high school children, but at the same time, I'm always here. I don't disappear. I'm present. I work my hours. I frequently stay late. It's not uncommon for me to put in a 10-hour day to get things done, to respond. I'm going to, be charged with a task, and I'm going to complete that task. I'm, always, pushing myself to make sure that I get my duties and my responsibilities completed on time. So I do work hard. I have a very good work ethic. I think is something that everybody would say. That I am, willing to, as I kind of reflected in the previous question, I'm willing to step into the frame to help out where possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, time management and balancing multiple priorities is important it's an important skill to have in this role. How do you make decisions about how you spend your time? And what strategies do you use for balancing multiple priorities?
Excellent question. Especially within the world that I live in right now, with regards to legal management, you can have a plan that says I'm going to deal with A, B, and C today, but you end up dealing with M, N, and O. It's not uncommon that you'll walk into a firestorm because some attorney's trying to get a deposition set up and running, and they can't get their Zoom to work on time. And so while I need to get something done for the 401k program, I'm going to have to prioritize everything and go to what's the biggest issue at the moment, and then address that. Dealing with the Zoom connection is relatively innocuous, at least for me, and how I feel about technology. It wouldn't be that big of a deal for me to prioritize everything to what is going to be the biggest firestorm. I'm not going to turn around to anybody and say, I don't know the answer to that. You're going to have to talk to somebody else about that. It upsets me to no end whenever I hear a legal assistant say, that's not my job because they're not assigned to that attorney. I don't care who is assigned to whom. It is important that we provide great customer service. So if somebody comes to you in a panic because they have something that needs to be printed or something that needs to be filed, that we address that in the moment, and then we can go back to the other tasks that we have in relation to our job. So I do try to prioritize my day. I do try to work on time management skills, absolutely. It's a fine art, but within a world that is malleable and constantly in flux, you have to prioritize what are the biggest brush fires and then move through those so that you can get to those tasks.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, I have the next question, and it relates to board relationships. What would your approach be to establishing and maintaining a good working relationship with the Board of Commissioners? And the second part is, and what is your understanding of the role of the county administrator relative to the relationship with the Board of Commissioners?
Well, I think in establishing good relations goes to having an open mind, listening to different opinions. I'll be the first to say I don't walk on water, nor do I have a crystal ball that has the answer to everything. I think everybody brings different talents, convictions to the table, and I think it's very, very important to look at an issue from all sides. I do that constantly in my day-to-day life. As a parent, I know that I would like to go one way, but the opinions of the rest of the family members say, no, we need to go a different way, and so you need to have open dialogue and open conversation. I'm reminded of a quote from a teacher that we don't have discussions, If you look at the root word of discussion, it comes from the Latin word percuss, to beat or strike. So I don't believe, if I'm talking to a 3-year-old, I want to have a discussion with them about looking both ways before they cross the street. But in conversations with adults, I look to things to be open. I look then for them to be an open dialogue so that there can be an exchange of information. Perhaps I don't have the right perspective on something, so it's important to have an open mind so that we don't sit around and beat and strike one another as we deal with a discussion. I believe if I get pulled over for speeding, the officer may have the right to have a discussion with me about speeding, so I'm open to that. But I believe in my conversations with those people I work with, it is important to have an open mind.
County government is a unique form of government. The Board of Commissioners and other elected officials, such as the clerk, sheriff, and treasurer, are co-employers. Have you ever asked a coworker to perform a task and she refused? How did you resolve this conflict?
I think it's important, if I heard the question correctly, if I try to delegate the task out and it's not completed, how do I address that? I do it in private. I don't ever talk down to somebody or try to correct somebody's action in public, in front of a group. I think it's important to make sure that you establish good relations with everybody. And I would like to know why, the background story as to why they didn't perform a certain duty or task. So it's important to pull that person or people or group into a private moment so that we can have a better conversation about the decision making that went into their answer. I don't know if I answered that correctly to the question.
I think we'll go on. Thank you.
So I have the next question, Mr. Ryan. Describe the experience you've had in disciplining and/or dismissing an employee and the steps you followed in the process. Then tell us about a time when you had to give feedback to an employee who displayed a lack of professionalism in their work relationship. What did you say? What standards did you set? And what was the outcome? So first disciplining and dismissing, and then a lack of professionalism, and how did you deal with both?
When it comes to disciplining, we follow a method. I have been following a method for a very long time about performance improvement plans. It's about talking to the individual ahead of time and letting them know, listen, we've got an issue here that needs to be addressed. It's about warnings. It's about correcting the behavior, hopefully just by having a one-on-one conversation with them. If the problems continue and persist, then I've had to put them on a performance improvement plan where I draft up the plan. You and I, or you and the attorney are going to sit down weekly to go over the issue. You're going to provide documentation that says, yes, I did, and I followed steps 1, 2, and 3. And if that behavior is not corrected through a performance improvement plan, you must know, last paragraph, you must know that your job may be in jeopardy as a result of not being able to follow the plan. So that we have a documented process rather than just coming into somebody and saying, I'm sorry, we're going to let you go today with no foreknowledge. The same thing would be with an annual review that I do with everybody. There should be nothing in an annual review from anyone that would be blindsiding the person being reviewed that would set them off. So they should at least know coming into the review that they know where they stand on everything. I frequently and often do provide the person being reviewed with their annual review 24 hours before their review takes place, so that they have time to look at it, review it, process the information. If they have issue or take issue with it, they can bring that up in that review with me, so that it doesn't, no one gets blindsided. I've had enough annual reviews in my lifetime where I'm given the review the moment I walk into my review slot, and now I have to read this review that may go on for a couple pages, and I don't have an opportune time to process all of the information, so that now the meeting's over and I have to go back to work, and I don't have the forum, which I believe the annual review process would be, with which to then report or have a response. So again, as far as disciplining, it's important to have that performance improvement plan in place. You asked about corrective actions. I believe I recall a legal assistant and having had that conversation with the legal assistant about wearing appropriate attire. We're a business, we're a law firm is in a conservative environment, always have been. Wearing a cocktail dress to the office probably is not the best attire. So we need to work on changing that. So I don't have issue with having those kind of hard conversations. It's just part of the day-to-day operation of the firm. Doing that at the anywhere would be the role of the administrator to make sure that rules are being followed.
Thank you. So the next question. Have you ever been a member of a group where two of the members did not work well together? And what did you do to get them to create a team atmosphere?
Yes, frequently. It's often we have relationships here at any firm where attorneys may not get along with legal staff. Their assistants, it's not uncommon. It happens. People just, I gave her a task. She didn't follow through. I gave her a task. The task she brought back to me was full of just errors. And yes, I've dealt with that on numerous occasions. It's always about making sure that we can bring everybody together. I try and I'll listen to the attorneys and their argument. I'll then go to the legal assistant and listen to their argument. I have had conversations where I bring the two together and we try to hash it out about understanding what the needs are for the attorney. So it's important to bring the challenges forward and put them on the table so that they can be addressed. I've often found it very difficult to be the middleman between two individuals. So therefore, I can't adequately, address the issue. Perhaps it's better coming from the mouth of the attorney. So let's bring the attorney and the legal assistant together so that we can have a meeting of the minds and then move forward. I have had to separate people too, just because we've tried, we've given it the effort, and it failed. And so it's not uncommon that we'll do some reassignments from time to time to make sure that the office is running efficiently.
Thank you.
Commissioner Robbins?
Describe your experience with budget development, financial management, and developing grant proposals.
Budget management is something we do daily here. It's about maintaining expenses. I worked for, it's on my resume, Nixon Peabody. I was in charge of a $4 million budget in the city of Chicago for Nixon Peabody, and we frequently had to deal with budgeting on an annual basis, and then 6 months later, after the budget was rolled out, we would do a review of that. So we would do a 6x6. We spent X in the first 6 months. What are we going to do for the last 6 months in order to make sure that we meet budget? I'm absolutely familiar with the budgetary process within the private sector. So I believe that maintaining expenses is important also for the public sector. I believe I said that earlier as far as one of the most important parts. That's what the constituents are looking for. They want to make sure that their government is running efficiently. So making sure the budget is working. I don't know if they necessarily want to or care about, two individuals having a tiff in the office, but they want to make sure that their tax dollars are being spent appropriately.
Thank you.
We are wondering if you've had a chance to research the county's past audits, and if so, what is your impression of the county's financial condition?
Great question. You caught me off guard. No, I have not looked at the tax audit.
Okay. Go ahead.
No.
All right.
Apologize. I have not had that opportunity.
Okay. Could you please describe your experience in establishing a budget accountability system?
Well, as far as an accountability system, I've never had to produce an account other than maintaining the budgets that we've rolled out. That I have to stay within a certain dollar amount. I have rent to pay. That's a fixed amount. I have budget. I have salaries to pay. That may go up and down depending upon how many people we add to the office. But I have a range that I'm looking to stay in, so it's more dynamic. I have, with regards to equipment and purchasing of equipment and maintaining leases on that equipment, we review the contracts when they come up to make sure that we will be paying a set amount for the time period of the lease, and whether that's the square footage within the office or it's the amount of time that we have on the copiers. So that is all baked into the budgetary process to make sure that I'm hitting everything efficiently. And with regards to I had mentioned it earlier, the 6x6, we would do, a review of that budget and how those expenses are meeting the budget that we've rolled out to make sure that it's happening the way we've planned it for the year.
Thank you.
What are the 3 effective leadership qualities you think are the most important? How have you demonstrated these qualities in your past or current position?
Transparency, honesty, and being friendly. I think I appreciate an office that can be lighthearted and doesn't take itself too seriously. I think, everybody comes to the office and they live in a separate world with their families, and so everybody is dealing with different issues and stresses. So to come to the office daily, knowing full well that we're all coming from those separate worlds, it's about understanding where people are at. And, everybody's going to have a bad day from time to time. I get it. I've been there myself. So, I think it's important to look at the big picture with everybody. That, I think to be completely without levity or without the ability to take a deep breath and laugh at oneself is a tragedy. So I look to make sure that everybody is, at least in the environment that I have here, is relaxed, is bringing their best foot forward. I said, being honest and transparent, I think are very important. I try to do that in my daily life. Like I said, I try to lead from the front. I'm willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with you to get the job done. I would hope that through my example with others, that they too would want to step forward with their best foot and are not going to hold back and not be honest with me to say, hey, you know what, I think we should have turned left when we should have turned right, so that we can make a corrective action. So we're working efficiently together as a group and as a team. I think that, in my role, it's about, here at least, it's all about customer service. Our customers are the attorneys, and we have to make sure that we're, doing our best, because when they're not doing their best, they're not, getting paid by our clients. So in essence, we're not getting paid. So I want to make sure that we're all working together for the collective work of our clients.
Mr. Ryan, I have the next question, and it's a two-part question again.
Okay.
I'll ask you the first and then the second.
Okay.
The first part is, describe the methods you would use to effectively relate to and work with elected officials, key leaders in Leelanau County, and its communities.
I look to them as, they're the ones who are hired into the role. So if they're saying we need to, do something, then I'm willing to listen and entertain, what project or what issue needs to be addressed within the context of what has been defined for me in my role, and how we can apply and address that issue for them. I think the issue would definitely be about being open and to hear what needs to be addressed and what needs to happen. I want to make sure that we can execute that. Absolutely, within my role, I want to make sure that is done within the boundary of what is in the parameters of what I'm able to do.
The other part of that is to provide us an example where you built collaborative relationships.
I think I do that daily in my relationship to everyone here that I work with. It literally is important to get out and rub elbows with everybody. My door is closed at the moment, but my door is always open, and I'm always out with everyone daily. I want to know where people are getting stuck. The office needs to run. It doesn't need to run efficiently. I want to know where, I have Brian, one of the attorneys here in the office, wanting to talk to me because his sister's son interned with us a few weeks ago. He wants to have a conversation about going forward with Reed and how Reed will. I want to have that conversation. I want to be able to address that for Brian so that we can create an avenue for Reed going forward in his legal career, and what we can do to make sure that we can be part of that. So it both helps Brian and then also helps Reed move forward.
Thank you for your answer.
Name one of your best accomplishments, including where the assignment came from, your plans in carrying it out, how you eventually did carry it out, and any obstacles you overcame. What types of problems do you most enjoy tackling? Give us some examples of such problems you face and what you enjoyed about them.
One of my biggest achievements within the business world would have been building out a 30,000 square foot office that we had in Chicago, and dealing with all of the contractors and building managers in order to get that done. We had a lease coming due. We were running out of space. We were in one location on Clark Street, and we needed to find space. I needed to get everybody's collaborative input on where the partners of the firm in Chicago wanted to move, I needed to go out and I needed to work with the brokers to find retail space, work with the architect, and then build out the space so that it would, we could move in within, I think we had an 8-month window, so time was moving along, and we built out 32,000 square feet. It was a long process, it was a long build out that I was excited to be very much a part of, got it done. We came in on budget, and I was very proud of the outcome. We were there from 2007 to about 2014 when I left to move back to Michigan. So I looked at that as one of my greatest professional achievements. Personally, I'm proud of the family and proud of the kids. I look at everything as a blessing, and we're all working together to move things forward. And very good.
Thank you. Tell us, what is the riskiest decision you have made? Talk about the situation and what happened. And then tell us about a time when you had to make an unpopular decision. Riskiest in...
decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A risky decision. That's a good one. I'll go back to, I don't know, any of the times I look at the review of our copying machines, whether we go with the Xerox or Toshiba lease agreement, and it's up to me to make that choice on which avenue do we go down. Machines are always going to work, or they're not going to work. They tend to break down. So ultimately, I need to find what service is going to have the best customer service, knowing that machines break down. It was a toss-up between a Xerox and Toshiba. I went with Toshiba because I knew I developed a relationship with that rep, and I felt strongly with that rep. I made that decision. It was somewhat risky in that they were slightly more expensive, and I knew that my boss in Rochester wasn't going to be happy with it. But I went with it, and in the end, I think we made the right choice, and I'm happy with that. So I had to stick with my guns. There was a second part to that question. I missed that.
The second part is tell us about a time when you had to make an unpopular decision.
I don't know. I think that unpopular was I had to let go of a patent specialist that we had in Chicago. Joey was everybody's friend. Joey was, he was kind of the office clown, but Joey also wasn't getting his work done. He was very close with all of the attorneys, and having to let Joey go was definitely not popular, but it needed to be done because Joey just wasn't getting his work done, and it was about making sure the work was getting done. The partners were upset, and it was a tough call, but I had to do it.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, that takes us through the questions. We thank you for your interest. We're going to be taking a break and talking about our interviews and how we proceed, and we'll be in touch. But before we let you go, do you have a question you'd like to ask us?
As far as a decision-making process for you all, you're looking to have this done in what time frame?
Well, we're going to keep looking until we're all comfortable that we've completed our task and we're ready to move forward. And we don't have an exact timetable right now, but we will keep you posted.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
much.
And good luck with the process for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to take a 10-minute break, but without objection, I'd like to allow Mr. Mikowski to make his public comment, because I know he wants to. Then we'll take a break, and Patricia's going to join us in about 10 minutes, and we'll have a discussion with the administrator about next steps. Everybody okay with that?
John,
Everybody okay with that?
to be sure, yeah, just to be sure I don't get a ticket and we leave at 15.
This group's never been on time returning from a break. Yes, we'll convene when you're here. Everybody comfortable with Mr. Mikowski going forward with his public comment?
Yes.
Mr. Mikowski, do you have public comment? Well, it's out of courtesy to you because we're going to be meeting. If you want to wait for our discussion, we can put you on at the end. That'd be fine. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and we'll reconvene.
15-minute break.
Can catch up. I know some. So, are you ready, Madam Clerk? I asked Chet if he would kind of brief us on his suggestions on process and next steps, and then we'll have that discussion amongst ourselves.
Well, all right. It's interesting sitting on this end of the table versus on that end of the table and watching the candidates. So Todd just asked me to say a few words, so I'll just kind of share my, and I'm not going to talk about any of the candidates. I think two of the most critical questions you ask is the role of the administrator and the three qualities or three skills to be successful. And I think probably all the candidates had the technical skills. Well, the three things, I think you have to have the basic technical skills. I think all of them had them at some level. Secondly, you have the ability to kind of plan ahead and have vision on where to go. But I think the most important to be successful in this job is people skills. Will it work with the 7 of you and who the commissioners are? As probably just as important, will it work with the staff people here? Because to make things work well, and we're fortunate in Leelanau County, we have great staff here, we have great department heads. And so things are going well. I think that's why a lot of people apply here. But it's critical that you feel comfortable, whoever you choose. When you look at, for example, Benzie County or Wexford County or even Grand Traverse until Nate got there, they had constant turnover in administrators. Wexford and Benzie are number 5 since I've been here. Grand Traverse is on number 4. I think Nate's going to stay there a long time. But it's not that those other candidates did not have the skills, it just wasn't the right fit. Or commissioners switch every 2 years. So you get one group that could work very well with the administrator, but then you get a whole different group of commissioners have a whole different attitude. I think of Emmett County. They had I think 4 years ago, everyone but one of their commissioners either chose not to run or got voted out of office. So they had a whole new board, and one of the first things they did was got rid of their administrator. Now, he had the same skills, the same as always, but it was just a different board, a different personality. And I think that's why you have turnover in administrators, just like you do in school superintendents. The old joke as a school superintendent is no superintendent ever lost their job because of academics. A county administrator, I don't think any administrator loses their job because of technical skills. It's those people skills, working back and forth. And it's critical, as you all know, because you're all going to have different viewpoints and opinions on issues. But you need someone that you can really work with well and that the staff trusts well too. So that's the key component. Someone can learn this job. Until I got this job, the only time I actually was in this building is the day I dropped off my resume. Now, I did my research and read the minutes and everything, but physically here, that's the first time I actually stepped foot in this building when I went down the hallway and dropped off my resume. The job is common sense. If you have someone with common sense skills, they can learn the technical skills. It may take them a while. You don't want someone that's going to come in here and change everything the first month they're here, whoever you pick. One of the first things I'm going to tell them is spend 3 months just getting to know the staff. Meet with all staff people, get to know them, get to know their names, what their passions are. So I think that's the key. And several of you are not coming back next year too, so there could be a whole different culture here. with the board too, which is critical. So you need someone that has the flexibility to work with different people. And if I was me, that's the person I would be looking for. The technical skills, they can learn. We have great people here. These departments pretty much run by themselves.
Yeah.
When you look around the room, I think all of you would agree we have great department heads. They all do a great job. You as a board get very few complaints about the technical part of the job. So we're in good shape there. We don't need someone to come in here and restructure everything. You need someone that's going to be working well with the board as well as working well with the staff.
Mhm.
So my advice is don't rush through this. If you have people you feel comfortable with, great. But if there's other people you want to interview, because I know you talked about that also, some of you had other candidates you want to see. I mean, we're not in a time crunch. I'm not going to depart on a plane on January 1st somewhere, so if you don't get the right candidate or so forth, but say, take your time, don't rush through it, but get someone that can really work with people, because it may be a different group of people sitting here. Some of you will not be here next year. And so you want someone that can work with people as well as work with department heads. And Leelanau County is a unique culture here. And I think someone who may work very well in an urban setting may not fit well here. A great example, I think, of this was quite a few years ago, and this little leadership class I took that Walt Disney World wanted to really enhance their hotel operation. So they hired the CEO of Marriott, which is a great reputation, great hotel chain. Within 2 years, this wasn't working out because his culture and his philosophy was completely different than what Disney wanted. We see a great manager, obviously was very, very successful, but it was a different culture. And the culture he created at Marriott was different than Walt Disney World wanted. And it just did not work out. So I think the key is don't rush, take your time, and get the person that you think will fit long-term with, no matter who the board members are up here. Because you're all going to change. And since I've been here, every 2 years, there are different board members. Melinda's the only one left from when I started here. And, Deb, you're leaving after 10 years. Patricia, you're leaving. So there's going to be different people. And it takes a while for commissioners to kind of get in the groove, too, because we have 3 of you there here in your first term. So the culture does change constantly. So you want someone that can be flexible and adapt to culture, because if not, then it's not going to go well. And that's what has happened in Wexford and Benzie. And I can tell you from talking to those people, and I know people in Grand Traverse County, it's very hard on the staff when you have to change in administrators. People get used, especially if there's constant turnover. Someone leaves at a long term and they retire, that's a different circumstances. But when you have constant turnover in administrators, it's very difficult for the staff.
We have a special meeting scheduled for the afternoon after the executive committee. So one of the options would be that we move this issue to the agenda of that meeting and we review the interviews for today and decide whether we want to develop a schedule for second interviews, and if we do, who are they, or do we want to reopen the search? But that's just one option, so let's hear from everybody.
I'm sorry. This is a committee of the whole meeting, so you can make recommendations, but you cannot take any actions.
Commissioner Eschen?
I was going to ask Chet to speak to us about what his experience or his opinion is on candidates that would be overqualified for the position. Now, you talked about a cultural difference. How does that look when you get somebody who's overqualified for the position? And to me, it would seem that we would get increased turnover.
Yeah, once again, it depends on that person's personality. Probably the best example I can think of, and it's public, is when Grand Traverse County brought in Tom Menzo. That was not a good fit because he wanted to do things his way, and he kept referring to what he did at previous jobs he's had, and that did not go well. You can't say it's his fault versus the commissioner's fault, but they were in a crisis mode constantly, and they had some major turnover in staff because of it. Nate Alger came in, who's completely different personality, worked there for a long time as a local person, And things are going calm, and, you don't read about them in terms of their budget issues or that type of issues. They have other political things. But sometimes you get someone who comes in, I won't mention a name, but a local school district hired a superintendent. This person kept talking about, well, when I was here, this is the way things were done. And it could have been perfectly well that district, but in Leelanau County, that did not go over well, and the superintendent did not last very long for that reason. So you got to find a fine mixture, and this person has to read the pulse of the board, because the culture of this board will change. It changes every 2 years. For those of you who have been here, I mean, Deb, you've been here, you've seen the culture change. Even one or two board member changes, it does create a whole different culture. It takes a while to kind of get into the groove. So if you bring someone with great experience, it could be a good thing, as long as he or she is flexible and willing to fit into the culture here versus trying to transfer their culture from somewhere else. I mean, the culture here in Benson County is completely different. Here to Grand Traverse County is completely different. Here to Wexford is completely different. And so it may be great someplace, but it would maybe not work here. So you gotta be careful about people with a lot of experience who may want to say, well, this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way I want to do it.
Commissioner Lutner.
Yes, you mentioned a special meeting in the afternoon of the 13th?
Right.
Okay, so for this
Yeah, we had a meeting already scheduled, but it was a committee of the whole, or budget slash. So
well, so my question, because I have it on as the 14th.
That's true. It's the 14th.
Was it the 14th?
Okay, so I'm correct. So we have a special 1 to 4.
That's right, we have, was it the 14th?
On the
We have
14th.
negotiations on the 15th.
Yes.
And we have, on the 6th.
No, it's the executive, so we have 13, 14, 15.
Okay, I knew there was 3 in a row.
Yep.
What's on the 15th?
Negotiations.
That's
So
just for
it's a
Todd.
couple
and
of- Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
The
that
three of
special
us
meeting is
have
the
a 3-day
14th,
run
yeah.
there. Yeah, okay, so
So should we have I'm sorry, are you not done?
I guess my question is, on the 14th, the special was for budget?
It was budget slash administrative search. I kept it
Now
generic enough.
So we must
to give you
have done
flexibility.
that because the 13th in the afternoon didn't work for people? Or did we think we were going to be too tired coming out of
I
executive?
think that was the logic that,
So we could.
as you all know, sometimes those executives last a
Yep.
long time, and
Yep.
emotionally you're kind of drained.
So we could do the administrator after executive, immediately following executive. Do you expect it would take a half hour, perhaps?
Well, I guess depending on how you want to have a dialogue today
Yeah.
in terms of how you want to proceed.
Okay.
I would be open to a meeting after the executive.
Do we know what that agenda looks like yet?
For the executive? Nothing controversial, but that doesn't mean we won't have an hour and a half public comment on issues too, so. And you never know, things just pop up, so it's hard to tell.
Well, the other thing, unless you want to make the special meeting on the 14th, be the administrator and budget. If you wanted to tackle administrator first and then go into budget, or do you want to not muddy the waters of budget?
It'd be my thought that if we all do our scoring and send those to the administrator to compile, the meeting for us to discuss next steps would be relatively short. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of discussion on candidates before we have second interviews and before we do reference checks. But I think we have to have a discussion about how do we want to proceed? Do we want to interview more than the ones we've already interviewed before we make some decisions? How do we want to handle the final interviews?
As far as scoring goes, I'd like to just have a final score for each one. Because it's hard, a lot of those categories, I mean, we didn't cover them all, and so you wouldn't, some of us would score some qualities and not others, and let's just do
There
the
is no
final.
magical way to do this.
Let's just do
Well,
how about a recommendation?
Let's make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Why don't we just start here and you talk and then we'll go down.
I'd like to just send in my finalists. How's that?
So you're
My
saying you don't
score.
want to have a dialogue about the 6 people this afternoon?
Oh, no, I'll talk.
I mean, you can, I'm just bringing it up. You have that right to.
No, I could do it for another half hour.
Lois?
I'd like to be able to review those videos of the interviews, just to kind of refresh myself and take a second look.
Okay, this morning Laura already sent out to you the private link to the meeting yesterday.
Okay.
And she can shortly send out today's meeting. Now, if you think you're going to interview more candidates, we'll make it public. If you think you're not going to interview more candidates, then we'll make it public, because what we don't want to do is have you decide you want to interview more candidates and have us ability to watch and listen to all the questions being asked.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, you
I already scored. I didn't know we were not, because, I mean, it was fresh. After you see somebody, you have an impression, you've already seen their resume, you've seen their information. So for me, while it was in my mind, I went ahead and did the scoring. I welcomed conversation this afternoon of just people's feelings, again, while it's in people's minds. To wait until the 14th, you'd either go back and re-listen to it all, or I'm not sure, I know I won't remember exactly my immediate comments by then, but that it's whatever people want to do.
Rick?
I'm pretty much open, and go either way. I think we've listened to 6 people here, and I think that we need to probably have some dialogue between the 7 of us, and let's just score them and see where they fall, and go from there.
Yep.
For me, I can say that none of us have really heard everything that each candidate said. So I'm all for watching the videos again, taking my notes, and scoring with the videos in mind. Sending them to Chet and having him determine if there is any sort of consensus on the candidates that we've reviewed. For me, I'm also going to look through the book to see if there's somebody else that we may have missed, and prepare another list in the event that we want to continue to interview, so that, we're prepared if we don't find a candidate out of this group.
My thoughts are much along the same line. I was going to say, I think it's not a bad idea to sleep on this, so to say. And if anybody does want to review tapes, that is a good idea, because we really do miss a lot, because we're trying to listen, but we're taking notes, and often there's distractions, and so I don't think that's a bad idea. I did think also about another thing we might do is go back through the book and see if there was anyone we missed. Do we want to bring in anyone else for a first interview before we do a second interview? We are fortunate in that we do have time, and I think we should think about all these things. I think we should come that day with the idea that of who we want to move forward to a second interview, if we do, and get an idea then, rather than discuss them today.
Well, as you remember, and I didn't have my sheet, but I think some of you have it, when you rated the candidates, I believe there were 17 individuals that at least one commissioner gave an A to, and I believe there were 12 candidates, at least 2 commissioners gave an A to. So you interviewed 7, but there were at least 5 candidates that at least 2 of you thought should be interviewed. And I don't know if any of you had those sheets. I'm going top of my memory there.
I thought it was 3.
Was it? I just felt.
3 or above.
But there were candidates that at least had support from 2 of you that you chose not to interview. So,
3, yeah.
It's really up to the 7 of you. There's no magical way to do this. And those grading sheets are just guides. They're not a formal vote. It's just to see if there's consensus among the 7 of you. Just like grading all these 68 people on A, B, and C, you were able to eliminate a lot of people just going through that process, would save you time. So the sheets that we pass out for grades are just as a way to help you kind of fine tune the process.
Well, as I listened to people, everybody had a little bit different opinion on how we proceed. My view is we had some good interviews. I left that experience thinking there's some real possibilities there. I wouldn't mind having, personally, I wouldn't mind having everybody just take a couple of minutes and share initial impressions. But I think we need to try to score on a consistent fashion and get a composite score as a part of our decision-making at our next meeting. But would you be open to having everybody go through and just talk about their perceptions of the 7 candidates we saw and see if we can emerge with some commonalities? Is that constructive?
I would do that. Sure.
Rick? Deb?
I think it's premature, but if you want to go with that, we can, just to see where we're at.
Melinda?
That's fine.
Let's do that, but we're not going to make decisions today, but so at least we leave here kind of understanding what everybody's thinking about optimism or pessimism or whatever. And shall we start where? Shall we start with District 1 and go right on through the districts? Rick, you want to start?
Sure.
Well, Rick is finding his first candidate. What I did with these, I treated the categories, the subs within it. I didn't do individual ranking unless there was something grabbed my mind. I just treated it as that was management's file overall, what were my senses. I didn't necessarily, in all cases, handle a breakdown unless there was a reason.
I think we're just sharing our initial perceptions.
No, I was, for you, you said you didn't like the scoring system.
Yeah, I just have the final score.
Yeah, that's the way I did it.
Okay, I'll start with SJ, start with Mr. Harris there. I feel, I'm just going on his interview. And that's how I scored these people on their interview, not their background or anything, just what I saw and how they answered the questions. I thought, he comes with a good background as far as being involved with the county and how it works, being a commissioner and being involved with Lansing. I saw some strong points and some weak points, but I rated him up there. Mr. Fulmer, I thought he did okay. I guess the part I didn't like with him is watching him on Zoom. It's kind of hard for me to get a good feel for him. Just a thing with me from being an expert in interviewing, and it's maybe not a big thing, but he didn't look in the camera at us. I kept looking down or looking everywhere but us. I'd like to see him in a one-on-one setting, but he did by Zoom. Mr. Lamb, I scored him high. Locally knows the area, knows quite a bit about the government and with the schools. I felt he would be a strong candidate for a second interview. Today, going with the first one there, I scored him high on his interview, and that's just based on his interview, the way he answered the questions. But I don't feel he was a strong candidate. But if I go on the interview today, I thought he did an excellent job. Deb Allen, I thought she did a great job. She's got the backgrounds at all levels, I feel. She's got the HR, she's got, mentioned she may be a little weak in the budget part, but, I mean, she's been around it. She's been around at the township level, been at several different counties, Otsego, Crawford. I thought she'd be a strong candidate. The last one, Mr. Ryan, he could be a strong candidate, but I just felt he did not come prepared today. He did not, he was winging it, I felt, on a lot of the questions. He just wasn't there, so that's pretty much, if I had to pick, you know, if we were going to go with 3 for a second round, I would go with Mr. Harris, Lamb, and Allen.
Thank you.
How in-depth do you want these conversations to be at this point?
I think it's up to us collectively, but I think what Rick did is helpful. And I mean, it just gives us a sense. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to going to the meeting downstairs. I would like to do that. I think I would like to be
This has
educated.
priority for me than that meeting down there.
I understand.
Just so you know. Harris, he came across very positive. I think he got his own ideas on how he wants things done. I find that he may be inflexible. And for me, I don't think he had the maturity that we're looking for in a candidate. His time in the future may come, but I think he's got a little growth to do. That's a personal opinion. And the reason I asked the question to Chet is Mr. Fulmer, I believe he was the next candidate, overqualified, coming from maybe a different culture and coming to this. I think that I don't see him being here very long because I think he would be bored and move on. He's got his hands in a lot of different things. Not that he couldn't do the job. I just think he wouldn't be here long. I just don't think he would have the county in his outlook for the county not in our best interest. That's just my gut feeling, if you want to say. Patrick Lamb, as you said, he's local. He's interviewed. He knows the process. He's a potential. I'm not sold on him, but he's a potential. The same thing with Mr. Pelnick. Had all the right questions answered. Has a lot of experience. But again, I don't know that he would fit into this culture. Deb Allen, I don't know how long she's lived here. She comes from outside the community, but she has involved herself in different community events. She didn't spend a lot of time with us telling us a lot of things. I think she was our shortest interviewer today. She's got some foundational structure that I like as far as her principles and her outlook and her heart. She could be a potential. What I think about Dan Ryan is I like some of the key points that he made as far as being honest and helpful, dependable. I like that aspect. I don't think I heard dependable from any other candidate per se. I'm going to go back and listen. But dependable with a good work ethic. I liked that. He's used to putting out fires in his role where he serves today. I don't think he's got much board relationships. That would be a learning curve for him. He does have some history with HR, very little in finance, which concerns me. But he does have a legal background, which would be a plus, you might say, to keep the county on the straight and narrow in conjunction with our outside. So I would consider him. It may change next week.
Yeah. Well, in the interest of being concise, Fulmer, Palaniuk, and Allen are my top 3 candidates. Brian, it seemed like, understood maybe office management, but didn't understand.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we can't hear.
Sorry, okay, yes. My top choices are Fulmer, Palaniuk, and Allen. Ryan, because he works for a law firm, doesn't understand working with elected officials versus people who are employees, where you can maybe certainly fire somebody that's not working well in the group, but as an elected official, you can't do that. So that's where I stand right now.
I'll defer to the end.
Okay. My top 3 were Fulmer, Lamb, and Allen. I thought Mr. Harris, I was troubled by his comments on, it just put a little niggling thing on my mind that he would always vote no on the budget, which in my opinion is not the most responsible thing to do, but he was saying he was making a point. And it bothered me that he, fought to close the health facilities without having first a plan for having people. But he had other strengths. I just didn't think that he was a good fit for this job. I think, as was said earlier, that he needs a little more experience and growth and understanding. Mr. Fulmer, I liked his strength of leadership. I like the fact that he did have humor. As Commissioner, you did it, Rick. You mentioned, I was trying to think who said this, that he didn't interview well on Zoom. I think a lot of people don't. He's one I would definitely like to see in person. He has a very strong financial background, understanding of everything from budgets to grants to all of the things that would be wonderful for our county. I thought he was very sophisticated, a good communicator in terms of his answers. So I thought on the budget when he said he had looked at it from a standpoint of the spread across departments to get a sense of the programmatic lay of the land. It was very interesting that he didn't look at it to analyze the health of the county. So it was an interesting statement. Patrick Lamb is local, has done some amazing things in terms of his accomplishments of collaboration that are very impressive. He's had a major impact in that program. He had good answers on the questions that related to his experience. The other answers were more process-oriented, kind of textbook, if it wasn't something that was directly within his skill house, which is understandable. I think he's good leadership skills. That's the reason I'd bring him back. Mr. Palaniuk, he said all the right words, but it wasn't really integrated into a lot of experiences, and so it was I just couldn't get a read on him in a lot of ways. I don't know how he would fit given his interview, but he may. Deb Allen, strong but compassionate leadership. I think that's one quality that would be really helpful here. It certainly fits with our current administrator. She has a strong understanding of budgets and grants, even though she hasn't had maybe as much experience with those. She was very honest in terms of what she has and hasn't done, her knowledge on unions, but no direct experience. So I think there's a lot of room for exploring other things with her, and that's why I'd like to call her back. Dan Ryan was a very nice guy. I think he, in his world, has excellent skills. I think it is a cultural thing that shifting his experience relative to us and what we need here would be, I don't know how he would do with that. It was interesting. He has a hands-off leadership, which is good in many ways, but he was also a little bit negative is how he's expressing his oversight responsibilities. So I just didn't think he was exactly what we're looking for right now. So that's why I went with the other three.
Thank you.
My thoughts about Fulmer is that, yes, I believe he's overqualified. But boy, do we need those skills for housing and grants and budgets and all of those things. And my balance to perhaps overqualified is he does have a house and a mortgage here. So I think he's looking to come here and stay in the house that he's owned for forever, and his family. I think he's looking for a position where he can settle. He's moved around a lot. So I think that could balance that. He has pretty phenomenal skill set. I'm bouncing between Allen and Lamb. I think they would both do a really good job. I liked Patrick's personality. I think he'd probably work well and create a team. Palahniuk was impressive, but I think I like Allen and Lamb more. Ryan was not answering the questions. He was off somewhere. I don't think he was prepared. I don't think he has a clue. I didn't hear that he has a clue that it's different working with a board of commissioners and a county. And Harris, I will agree, I think he's young and needs a lot more experience and doesn't really have experience managing a large group of people. Palahniuk said he has phenomenal experience and deep knowledge, so that's a real question for me.
Thank you.
Well, I have to say I appreciated all the interviews. So starting with Mr. Harris, what I did like about him is I liked his confidence, and I liked he has good government experience. I thought he answered some real good. I thought he answered questions very well about balancing and priority, etc. Could there be more maturity? I could see that as that this could be a position you could grow into very quickly.
I just have to state, please do not talk about age. You can talk about experience and so forth.
We can talk about
I know several of
maturity.
you have, but just,
Okay.
it's a fine line, so just wanted to warn you. You can talk about experience,
Thank you.
but when it comes to
Experience.
age or that type of stuff, it's a fine line to be, so I just want to warn
Well,
all of you.
Thank you.
Very well. I'm talking about presentation. Is where I'm going. So a person could grow into this position very well, even if there's some some areas that weren't exactly covered, you could grow very well because our staff, for the most part here, is very, I'm going to say experience. I would have gone with maturity in the job, but we've got a lot of that settling. So I really liked Mr. Harris. Mr. Fulmer, very, very qualified in housing, but that's really, all I really saw him bring to the table was his housing experience. So, you know, while some of it meshed or may have paralleled with budgeting, et cetera, I think there's more important things we saw in other candidates, such as more important things I want our administrator to focus on rather than housing, since we have so many fantastic organizations already concentrating on housing in this county. I would rather see some other strengths in our administrator, because I have an idea that that's probably his first love, and so that concerns me just a little bit. Mr. Lamb, I liked his confidence, and I liked his facilities management experience. I think that could be a great thing to bring to the table. I liked how he talked about standing on decisions that he had thoughtfully thought through and implemented. So he impressed me. Mr. Palnick, he was very interesting to listen to. I just didn't see a lot of maturity in county government, or maybe experience is a better word, in the county government. I just didn't see that. Ms. Allen, it's very difficult because we've got notes all over the place. I really liked her, that she said, you know, you learn the most when you listen, because I think that's a really important thing coming into a courthouse or government facility to work. I think that's really extremely important. I like that she said you remove the personal but appreciate the passion. I think that's really important. And she spoke about transparency and compassion. I just think when you're dealing with employees and co-employees, et cetera, that was a very good skill to have. And I just thought she was very professional. So is that all of them? So to bring back, I would bring back Harris, I would bring back Lamb, and I would bring back Allen.
I did not have Harris or Ryan on a list of any further interest. I was not impressed with those two. I was impressed with Palaniuk, but I was overwhelmed by his city experience and his hospital experience, and think he's better prepared for a much bigger job than what we have. The three candidates that I was most impressed with would be Deborah Allen, Patrick Lamb, and Mr. Fulmer. I know Pat Lamb, and I know a lot of people that know Pat Lamb. And when Pat Lamb was done, I wrote notes about all his advisory boards, working with business and industry and government, and I like that. I know personally the grants that he's written, and I like that. I know how he's handled HR issues, and when you're dealing with teacher unions and several different teacher unions, and knowing that Pat's been at the table for negotiations, and Pat's been at the table for grievances, and Pat has had to deal with some serious personnel problems and done it well. Anywhere you go in Traverse, you see Pat involved in something, and I like that. I like the community engagement, and I don't think he's as engaged as in Leelanau County, but that's because he's based in Grand Traverse County, but he lives in Leelanau County, and I like that. He's going to be here forever. His kids are at St. Mary's. He's going to be here. I love that he was a facilities manager person in school, and thought to myself, I wonder if he could take on some major responsibility there as a part of his administrator role. And maybe that would address that issue that we had talked about. So I like that. On Deb Allen, I loved her soft skills. I can just imagine staff feeling really good about Deb Allen as a supervisor, as a listener, as a problem solver. And I know Deb's experience in the community is in collaboration. And Patricia, you asked about collaboration, and she didn't say as much about that as I know is true about that with her. And I like that. But I was intrigued by Mr. Fulmer too. So the three I'd bring back for me would be for sure Deborah Allen, for sure Patrick Lamb, and I think we ought to talk again to Mr. Fulmer. So that's me. So we've heard from everybody, and now I guess one more time let's go and let's start at the other end now. And what's next steps? Hearing everything you heard, Melinda, from the six of us, what's next step?
Well, I really, I guess I missed Deborah's top three, if she had a top three, because I was trying to count here, and if we had easily two candidates that at least five of us or, five or more of us liked, we could probably move forward to second interviews. But I can't quite, I didn't catch if you had a top three.
I don't think I identified those.
Yeah, so that's the only thing. I do see, just counting quickly here, I see Alan with 6, Lamb with 5, and Harris with 2, Fulmer with 3, 4. So, unless I'm back to, unless you want to sleep on this a little bit, unless do we want to take into consideration, one other thing, I guess, there's pros and cons to looking at whether or not somebody already has a house here in the county. That is definitely a pro, or in the area. But at the same time, I don't want to see us overlook another candidate for that reason, or an applicant for that reason. And I don't think we really can, right? That being said, I also want to ask you whether or not, I'm expecting that we might get some calls from employees or constituents that say, this is your guy or this isn't your guy. So how much of that do you want us to influence our decision-making and wait until, that's a week and a half to make a final decision on who we bring forward to interview for a second interview? Because I think second interviewers are definitely our next step. Unless I hear from people that I didn't see what we're looking for, do we want to interview other candidates first? So that's my thoughts.
I've heard from a couple of people sitting at the table that think that before we do second interviews, we need to reach out and do some phone calls and check some references. And I asked Melinda yesterday if she'd be willing with me to whatever we decide, when we decided if we could together make some reference calls. And if that, I would like to make reference calls before we invite anybody for a second interview. I think we know what we hear from Mr. Lamb and Ms. Allen because she's around here, but I think especially for Mr. Fulmer, we owe it to him to make some reference calls.
Before dragging him here.
Before we set the second interview. But are we, I guess that's the question, are we ready to do that? And is there enough commonality to say, yes, maybe on the special meeting we have in September, let's decide officially to have interviews with these 3 or 4 candidates? Are we ready for that? We can't do that today, but we can take that to the meeting.
Is that allowable next step in your opinion? We have HR and our administrator here that we do reference checks before a second interview?
You can, if you do that, you have to make sure you ask the exact same questions to everyone that you call.
Okay.
So I would strongly recommend that too, we do it, that Darcy involved, and we
Okay.
develop the questions
Okay.
first.
If it's,
And
I'm
obviously,
certainly
we have to
willing.
get permission from the candidates.
Sure. Okay. Then certainly.
But
I
once
would-
again, there is no set formula, it's whatever
Okay.
you agree to. But background, this is different than a background search. A background search would happen, I think, once you identify at least 1 or maybe 2 finalists, that's all different. But to the reference check, I personally don't put a lot of credence in reference checks because you're asking them to name people that we're gonna call. And so if they can't come up with 3 people that say positive things about them, that would be a red flag, but it's a common practice. But a lot of employers will tell their employees to only state their terms of employment and will not give you specifics. There's been a lot of legal cases, and most attorneys will tell individuals and companies not to respond to reference checks, other than say, yes, he or she was employed from September this date to this date, this was her position. Will not go over the details, because that's when a lot of lawsuits occur. So it's a good idea, but just don't assume to get a lot of information when you do reference checks, because you're calling people that those people have identified, and most of those employers will be very careful what they say, even if there were issues.
Tricia?
What do you expect coming out of a background check? I mean, what are you looking for?
You talking about background check?
Yeah, I thought
That was a more thorough thing. For example, when I was a finalist selected, one of the detectives actually went and talked to people at Northwestern Michigan College, went and talked to people at Buckley Schools, went and talked to people in Charlotte. He actually drove up there, met with all the board members, and did a very thorough background. So
Okay, good.
they did my professional background check as well as personal. They asked for my social media contacts. And he wrote about a 4-page report that went to the board before the final offer was made.
Yeah, that's
There has been
what you
cases,
expect.
there have been cases, and I've been involved with 2 of them, where there are things in people's background that would never surface during interviews or during reference checks. I know 2 classic cases that some major issues forwarded by doing a background check. And this is not just a casual background.
No, well, that's what I wondered. Thank you.
So there's different than the reference. Yeah. Rick?
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could do background checks, but, as I'm looking at the list here, I guess I would, we kind of, as a group here, we narrowed it down to 4 people, and I'd say, we bring all 4 back for the second, and I don't know, reference calling, I don't know if it's really we're gonna benefit that much. We can't do a background, it'd be nice, but, to do 4 backgrounds, or even 3 backgrounds, you're talking,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to send, somebody from the sheriff department to go to South Dakota, and we don't have that time.
If you do the background, just do it on your final list.
Right, yeah, so I would lean towards, we pretty much all agree, and let's, bring those 4 back and see where the cards fall with these 4, let them have the second interview.
One thing I would suggest you do, if you do final interviews, also set up a time for that candidate to meet with the staff in an open forum. You get a lot of information. Some people may communicate very well with the board members, but not so much with staff. And I think I brought a couple examples where those have been very valuable. Like when I interviewed for school superintendent, and this is very common, they set up a time where the staff can come in. It's not an interview, it's more of a dialogue. They get to ask he or she their background, more of a dialogue, just to see how their reaction is. So I would say you schedule those usually the same day as you do. You usually do those first and then do the follow-up interviews. But I think you want to do part of that process here also. I think the staff would appreciate if you feel like they have to say, they don't have obviously a vote, but they may pick something up during those meetings that you as a board would not pick up.
So you're talking about like a coffee hour
Yeah.
with them?
Mhm. Yep. Let's say 2 to 3, any staff can come in, talk to candidate A,
Okay.
candidate B.
Could we look at, say, we did interview, give these 4 a second interview, and say out of that next interview, we're going to pick 2 for the final?
You may want to do the 4 and see how those go.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying, do these 4
once
and say we're going to pick 2 out of that.
What is the fourth that you have? We have Ellen, Lamb, Palmer.
Harris,
Harris, Lamb.
Fulmer, Lamb, and Allen.
I don't know if we have that, how many people
I
were
had,
voting for Harris?
I had 2 for Harris.
Yeah, I don't think
But
Harris
I-
was on the list.
I'm just going,
Out of 6,
I may have missed,
I think it was Pelnick
Pelnick was the
other one that
runner-up.
Well, no,
Did you get them
Pelnick,
out? Okay, I didn't know how many you
I
did.
only got 1 for Pelnick.
Yeah, no,
So-
I think.
Yeah, I just had 3, but I think we can make that official decision at our special meeting.
Yeah.
And I understand the problems with reference check, but I think we need that just to demonstrate that we're taking this seriously and doing our job. And knowing that there's a limit to what you learn, at least we've tried. And I think that that would be wise for us to do.
So I'm,
Now, one thing you may find out, for example, because it was in a newspaper and it was in this cover letter, there was a separation agreement, from one of the candidates. And so that'd be a legitimate thing to ask, okay, what are the terms of the separation agreement, if they're public or not? That'd be a legitimate question to ask, since it's in his cover letter.
but that's Pelnick.
Yeah, but I use that as an example.
It was in a newspaper account that I read. I was like, no, that's kind of a flag.
Do you have advice for any one of us about what we
Well,
can do on our own
I
relative
would
to checking social media?
Say, be careful what you say or respond to phone calls instead of comments, because that's when troubles come up. You know, you may innocently say something to somebody that comes back and haunts you in a future day. And that's why attorneys are very careful about doing reference checks, because usually people say things on both sides that are not appropriate. And the minute you do that, there's always a potential for a lawsuit. So you have to be very careful what you say. But from what I heard from all of you, I think there's kind of consensus. We're not going to make a decision today. You all going to get a link. You already have a link to yesterday's meeting. You'll get a link today to today's meeting. This is a preliminary. I think all of you know where you all stand now. You're not going to make a formal decision today, so I think you kind of accomplished your goal. I think you agreed to do reference checks, that the chairman and the vice chairman are going to work with Darcy, and we'll come up with the questions, and the 3 of you can do the reference check. I think it's way too premature to do a background check, and you're right, that's the final stage.
And if any staff or community members want to give input, can we direct that to either Darcy
Yeah.
or Chad?
And you can certainly listen, but just be careful how you respond to those types of comments.
So then I think we've done Lamb, Allen, and Palmer.
Well, but you're not going to decide today. That's
No, I
gonna-
know, but as far as the reference checks.
Well,
Or are you gonna
we're
reference
not,
check?
we're not going to do the reference checks until we decide for sure who we're bringing in, but we're going to do them before the interview,
Okay, so you're not
right?
going to do them
I mean,
before
I
next
think that's
week?
what all, because there is not agreement on all of which one.
Okay, so you're not going to do it before
Right.
next week?
Deb and then Patricia.
So what if we find out that Mr. Fletcher had surgery yesterday or today?
Yeah. If he contacts us, we'll let all 7 of you know.
Okay.
You can decide.
Because I think
Yeah.
it would be unfair not to allow him to do a first
Yeah.
interview.
Obviously, there's a legitimate reason why you cannot participate.
Right.
We'd let you know and you could determine whether you want to
If he got cold feet, then we don't want him anyway.
I will share that we did hear from Darcy that she's had prior experience, difficulty working out with him communications.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see, if he responds to us, we'll pass it on to all 7 of you.
Okay.
So, did we say that you're gonna have a short special meeting after the executive, or did you say you're gonna wait till the 14th and change that to a special?
I think we said we're waiting to the 14th.
I thought so, I just wanna make sure we're relevant. So we will get the list out to change that to a special meeting on the 14th. I believe that's at, I don't remember what time it is.
1 to 4.
1 to 4.
Is it 1 to 4? Okay.
Tricia?
Yeah, I just want to raise one issue, just to be sure going forward. I mean, we've had the first interviews, we've looked at all the candidates. Something that Chet said right at the beginning, is this the board that should be making that choice? It is, 2 of us definitely will not be here. Everyone has opposition. There may be more who will not be here. And is the success of any administrator kind of picking up on what you were saying today, Chet, even knowing that the board can change every 2 years, but this individual, he or she will have to work closely with the new board, not with this board. So I just wanted to pose that to see, are we all confident that we want to go through and select the next administrator, or do we want to push that over, maybe narrow it down and leave those decisions to the next board?
Thank you. Deb?
Well, something to think about on that issue. And if you can remember back, I can remember back to my first year as a commissioner on the board. Huge learning curve. And I think everybody can agree to that, okay? There is so much for a new person to learn. We may have people that never have had any experience hiring, okay? We have a semi-seasoned board, you might say. And we have had that experience with working with an administrator that works in our departments. And in my opinion, I thought about that same thing. Should we turn it over to the new group because they're going to be governed by them? But then you have to think about the experience and then the impact on the county. And that's just my 2 cents there.
Melinda?
I look at this as being our responsibility. We have been elected to do this job, and this job is in front of us. So I think it's our responsibility to do the best we can to set next year's board up with the best administrator possible. My first year, I came into a commission with no administrator. And I am sure I remember that correctly. I think he had resigned in the spring, and I really don't think there was, at any rate, it was not, we had a couple of very tumultuous years of no good leadership. And looking back, as Deb said, the learning curve is so big and so steep that to have to deal with hiring an administrator and knowing what you're looking for or should be looking for, I think it would really be a very unfair thing to put on a new commissioner. I really do. I think we just need to just try to be super responsible in our elected positions and do the best we can.
Gwen?
I agree with them. And poor Chet wants to get out of here.
As I said, I'm fairly semi.
Well, I appreciate everybody's comments, because as I said, I've just felt like we needed to raise that to be sure. But I think some good comments have been made here as to why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you.
I think our first concern is that when we leave, we don't want to leave our departments hanging. We don't want to leave that next board hanging. We want to do the best we can to provide good leadership and.
Well, I think Melinda brought up a good point, because even before I came in, there was a void there for a while, and there was a lot of stress among the department heads.
Yeah.
Just kind of not normal. And so I think there's, no matter how you do it, you want to have continuous leadership.
Well, those are good reasons for going forward, which is, thank you all for, just one of those things I wanted to be sure we were clear.
So if somebody can come with this, Darcy will contact all of them, thanking them for the interview, and telling them that the board will meet on the 14th to make the determination about next steps and who will be the next round of interviews, correct?
And we will have our special meeting at that time and make final
Because
decisions.
we need to reach out to those 7 people today and thank them, and so they know what the next step is. Because I know being on that side of the thing, you want to know what the next step is. And they all kind of ask about what the next step is. So the next step is the board. Bill Darcy will thank them, and we'll tell them that the board will have a special meeting on the 14th to determine the next steps and the second round of interview.
Thank you, everybody. I think we have a plan to move forward. Anything else before we go to public comment? Mr. Mikowski?
Very interesting, I appreciate your comments. First opening remarks to summarize things. One thing that you have to remember that government is run by people, and people are extremely emotional. They make emotional decisions which are very difficult to deal with sometimes. But I have some comments. I listened to 4 people this portion, and I haven't heard any of the process, I'm sure you have, that they're concerned about providing the citizens, the people, the residents, the best possible least cost government. I'm not sure if any of them are covered, or downsizing government, or how to avoid government putting together and getting villages in place to add additional villages when they're really unnecessary. One of the people spoke about scarce resources. Governments never have scarce resources. They spend all the tax money they get, and they get more, they'll spend. It's automatic. I know an attempt was made by the board some time ago for a minute change in the rest of the commission's planning. They can't see where enough money. And that's a tragedy. Our prudence escapes us when there's too much money coming in to make this money. And I also noticed among the people that applicants, they do want to cater to the commissioners because they know who's going to authorize their checks. And they are not too concerned about the constituents or the residents. The applicants all are interested in themselves. I'll give you copies of.
Thank you.
This is a good article to learn how we can all come together.
Do you mind, Steve?
At this point in the agenda, there is commissioner comments, and I'm excusing Gwen because she has an appointment for her husband. Commissioner comments, anybody? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Jen.